American Comics. The Bad Professor, The Disbandment of the X-Men begins. Chapter 81. San Van Gonza. The water demon was trying to drown the evil spirit knight Johnny, when suddenly the ghost knight grabbed his shoulder, and before the water demon could react, the eyes burning with hell flames met him. Boom. In the depths of its soul, it only felt that the hell flames roared, like a monstrous firestorm. The bad things that the water demon has had since its birth are judged by the eye of judgment. In just one breath of time, the water demon completely dissipated, leaving not even a trace of dust. Sinful souls do not deserve to live in the world. The ghost knight also returned to the ground. He untied the chains on his body. One end of the chain hung on the ground, and the hell flames quickly spread throughout the chain. I saw the evil spirit knight throw out the chain, and immediately tied the wind demon's body. The wind demon is also extinguished in the eye of judgment. At this time, only the last Black Heart demon remained. The Black Heart demon has absorbed the covenant of Saint Van Gonza, more than 1,000 evil spirits. His energy was extremely huge, which made the Black Heart demon feel that he only needed one punch to break through the two dimensions of earth and hell. Seeing the evil spirit knight walking towards him, the black-hearted demon showed a teasing on his face. "My father, I know you can see me through the Ghost Rider. It's a pity that your knight can't stop me anymore, and I will become the new master of the hell dimension. Rest assured, I will not kill you, and this is not because of the so-called family affection of human beings." Quote. "The boring emotions of a weak race. I imprisoned you to let you see, I will spread the power of the hell dimension to the entire universe, and your rotten rules should have fallen out of fashion a long time ago." Quote. Black-hearted demon said proudly. Charles guessed that the Black Heart had not heard of the villain dying of words. In fact, it doesn't matter if there are many words or not, the result is already doomed. The Black Heart demon's power is unmatched, but he can't kill the evil spirit knight who has an endless stream of power. Backed by Mephitos and the entire hell dimension. At this time, the evil spirit knight is not an exaggeration to say that he is a true immortal body. However, as long as Johnny the evil spirit rider seizes the opportunity and unleashes the eye of judgment, the Black Heart demon will be cool. Just as Charles expected, on the eve of dawn, the evil spirit knight used the eye of judgment to destroy the Black Heart demon, including more than 1,000 evil spirits of Saint Van Gonza. The clouds that shrouded San Van Gonza completely dissipated. "Charles, it's really like you said, the evil spirit knight defeated the Black Heart demon." Gwen turned to Charles after watching a hearty movie. Although she had always believed in Charles in her heart. But the disparity between the strength of the evil spirit knight and the Black Heart devil, as well as the three demons, is too great. This made her feel bottomless, while Charles had always been calm. "It's a big price, I'm talking about Mephitos. Guess why Mephitos asked me for help?" Charles put a slice of potato chips in his mouth and ate it as he went. Gwen shook her head in bewilderment. It seems that Mephitos is clearly capable of dealing with the Black Heart devil. For the covenant of Saint Van Gonza, those more than 1,000 evil spirits, is the greatest masterpiece of Mephitos. At the same time that the evil spirit knight used the eye of judgment to destroy the Black Heart demon, those evil spirits were also completely destroyed. This is 1,000 wounds to the enemy and 800 self-inflicted damage. Quote. "So never negotiate a deal with the devil, the blood of those guys is black." Charles explained for Gwen. Congratulations to the host for successfully placing it and rewarding a silver treasure chest. The sound of the swinging system sounded at the right time. Charles did not meddle in the affairs of Saint Van Gonza and was judged by the system to be rotten. After this chest is opened, Charles receives the deprivation and gift of mutant abilities. To put it simply, he can deprive one person of their mutant ability and then give it to another. But neither the object of expropriation nor the object of giving can be oneself. It looks great, Charles thought he could give Gwen a boost. Meanwhile, deep in the Himalayas, Karma-Taj. Fiorucci withdrew his gaze to Saint Van Gonza and let Mephitos destroy the San Van Gonza contract himself, which was really happy. "Supreme Venerable, what are you looking at?" Baron Mordo stood beside Ji Yuyi and asked respectfully. He followed Fiorucci's gaze, but couldn't see anything. No way, Fiorucci can even observe the multiverse at Karma-Taj, which is a realm he can never reach. A crisis on Earth, but it's no longer a problem. Moreover, By the way, it also solved a small hidden danger that has existed for a long time. Furuchi was in a good mood. She also looked at Charles, the leader of the mutant affirmative action movement, a man she had known for a long time. People who can single-handedly threaten the world, Ji Yuyi will not be ignorant of it. Changes about Charles. Ji Yuyi also knows a little about one or two. However, the mutant has no intention of destroying the world, so it has nothing to do with her. The contradiction between mutants and humans is, after all, a contradiction within the world. Of course, if he had to choose, Ji Yuyi would definitely favor the larger number of humans. It's not about race, it's a simple math problem. Not far from San Venganza, Charles appears in front of Mysterio Quentin with Gwen. Quentin was like hell. Isn't this guy Charles dead? And Gwen. The Blackheart demon guy said how powerful the evil spirit knight is, why is Gwen still alive? The black-hearted demon still dares to say that he is a waste. His men, including himself, are all waste. Miss Stacy, I encountered a little problem, just a little problem, so I delayed dealing with the elemental crowd. Quentin continued to make up lies. In case Gwen didn't see through herself, she couldn't mess with herself at this time. Gwen looked at him coldly. Huh, impudent liar. The black-hearted demon you rely on is dead, you despicable and shameless fellow. Gwen said angrily. Thinking that yesterday she believed in him very much and discussed how to deal with the elemental crowd together, Gwen was particularly angry. Feel like a clown being teased. If not in front of Charles, maintain the image of a lady. She felt that she would definitely beat Quentin beyond recognition. Quentin disappeared in an instant after making sure that Gwen had detected his plot. This is his mutant ability. Although it only travels a kilometer in diameter, this ability is a little faster than the Night Stalker. It can disappear without warning, appear without warning. Superior in flexibility. Quentin thought that he had thrown off Charles and Gwen, but the next moment, the two came in front of him again. This time, when Quentin tried to escape, Charles put his hand on his shoulder and immediately deprived him of his mutant ability. The ability is a ball of light. Charles can put it inside a storage ring. Charles, what is this? Gwen looked at the light and asked. Before Charles could tell her, Gwen knew, because Quentin was crying, and his proudest ability was gone. Charles stripped him of his abilities. Avadaso. Immediately after that, a green light shot out from Charles's fingertips, completely ending Quentin. When Gwen saw this scene, she still felt a little uncomfortable. Spider-Gwen has a no-kill principle. Since she became a superhero, she has not killed anyone. Charles took Gwen and comforted, if we let the bad guys go, we're hurting the good guys. Quentin concocted the story of the elementals, and they wreaked havoc in Venice, killing hundreds. Quote. Those who lost their lives need someone to get justice for them. And, if Quentin doesn't die, he will definitely expose your identity to the world. Gwen listened to Charles's words and was deeply touched by his words. Letting go of bad people is hurting good people. She once captured a vicious criminal in Queens. Gwen had seen him kill with her own eyes. But for lack of actual evidence, the court was unable to convict him and the man was released on the spot. Then the man killed another person. Gwen caught him again, also for evidentiary reasons, and was charged only with second-degree murder and sentenced to 15 years in prison. If I had killed him in the first place, there would have been no tragedy later. Charles knew that Gwen was thinking about unhappy things, and gently patted her shoulder with his hand, and said softly, you don't have to blame yourself for the previous things, bad things happen all the time in this world. Quote. When you do the good things you can, you have surpassed countless people. A person who does good deeds should not be condemned by conscience. Back at the hotel, Chase tells Gwen about the mutant ability. He can give Quentin's abilities to Gwen. However, this gift is not only ability, she also activates Gwen's X factor. That is, Gwen will become a mutant. How to choose is Gwen's power, and Charles naturally will not make decisions for her. When Gwen knew that Charles was a mutant, she agreed to accept the ability without even thinking about it. She already has abilities that are different from ordinary people. There's nothing wrong with being a mutant again. Anyway, Charles is also a mutant small. After having the mutant ability to teleport, Gwen was happy like a child, constantly flickering and disappearing. If it was with her spider silk, wouldn't her combat effectiveness be greatly improved? The ability to teleport is a waste skill in Quentin. But in those who are good at martial arts, it is the top skill. Gwen, in particular, is not only good at fighting, but also has the ability to move quickly, and teleportation can greatly improve her ability to move. Imagine using spider silk to swing in the city before. Some buildings that are too far away to reach need to be moved in a roundabout way. With the ability to teleport, teleporting within a kilometer in diameter can fill this gap. It's definitely not as simple as 1 + 1 = 2. Seeing Gwen's enhancement, Charles can't wait to deprive him of more abilities, and then give them to others. How many mutant friends can he get? That's too troublesome, it's better to increase the amplitude for the people around you. Charles doesn't want to be a 403 tool man. If you think about it, Jessica, Sky and others need it, who were originally mutants, and can no longer accept gifts. Oh, and there are 4 little ones, and the 4 little ones don't know if they can afford this gift. However, Charles will not casually catch a mutant and directly deprive people of their abilities. A gentleman loves money and has a good way. Or to deprive mutant villains of their abilities. That morning, Gwen's tour group left Venice for the trip to Rome. Gwen applied to the tour guide to leave the tour and signed a consent form to leave the tour on her own so that the tour company would not have to refund the rest of the fee to her. Originally, Gwen wanted to accompany Charles to have fun in Europe and live a two-person world. Who knew that Wolverine Logan found Charles? Charles, you're beautiful. Logan smoked his cigar, still looking tough. He sat down in the bar, praised Gwen, and got down to business. He has been wandering like a lone wolf since he was separated from the Storm Woman and the others from the Alkali Lake Dam. Anyway, he likes this kind of life. He used to wander the Americas to find lost memories. Now, he is looking back on the many years he lived. He came to Europe and stumbled upon a man who had disappeared from his life for decades. Saber-toothed tiger Victor Klid. Victor is catching mutants. Yes, that always does fool things. I wanted to get him out and kill him, but I couldn't find him. He has a strong sense of anti-detection. I found his traces a few times, and finally lost them all. Charles, I need your help. After Logan finished speaking, he took a long sip of beer, and he knew that Charles would help. Charles is a little strange. Who else is catching mutants after the destruction of Strack Industries? Being able to hire the saber-toothed tiger Victor is obviously not an ordinary small force. So, he is not afraid of the Mutant Independent Kingdom and the Hellfire Club. Charles agrees to Rogan's request, puts on a portable brainwave enhancer, and begins to look for the saber-toothed tiger Victor. But nothing was found. Charles searched again, but still couldn't find it. In the end, he had to admit that Victor, the saber-toothed tiger, had something similar to a mind-shielding helmet, and he couldn't locate him. Tantra. That Victor guy knows you exist, and he expected me to ask you for help. Quote. Logan angrily slammed his punch on the table. The bar's wooden table was smashed in two. Soon 2 bartenders stepped forward to theorize and were all thrown to the ground by Rogan's punch. Charles quickly took $500 from his wallet and paid them a knife, so that no more people rushed up and beat him, or he would lose more money. Logan, look, we can resolve disputes in a more civilized way. Charles shook his wallet, which did not shrink in the slightest. Logan threw his cigar on the ground, crushed it again, and said, but I don't have any money, Charles, you seem to have forgotten to pay me. Quote. Charles recalled, as if so. In the past, the ex-police were paid. After all, everyone bought daily necessities, and it was impossible to find Charles to pay for it. The pay is not much, but it is definitely enough. Because any larger expenditure will be reported to the action funds. That's a quarter of the year's earnings at the Tower Resort. However, when Charles paid his salary, Wolverine Logan was basically not in school. As for why it didn't hit Roganka. Apparently the ex-police lacks of finance, and Rogan's Vietnam War ID should indeed be updated. And what about your travel expenses? Charles asked. Logan made 2 handsome fist swings. Of course it's black boxing, you know I'm pretty good at that. It's good at physics, right? The 3 stayed in a high tower resort. Only now did Gwen know that the tower resort was actually Charles's property. No wonder she quietly took advantage of her father's relationship with George, and did not find the record of Charles staying in the Tower Resort Hotel that night. The owner lives in his own hotel, what a record. Charles asked Logan that the last time he lost his saber-toothed tiger was in Slovenia. This is a small continental country with a population of just over 2 million. If you capture mutants for research, it is obviously a good place. Actually, we can lure him out, can't we? Gwen volunteered. They can accurately locate mutants from the crowd, and naturally have a special way. High-end cases often only require the simplest methods. This is Daddy George's case handling experience. Charles will not allow his students to take risks. Logan said. Gwen said, I'm a mutant now. Quote. Logan gave Gwen a look to let her experience it for herself. Charles, even less likely to let his little girlfriend take risks. Who would have thought that Charles actually agreed? Charles felt that Logan underestimated Gwen. This is a battle-hardened street vigilante, definitely not a greenhouse flower. Even if Gwen can't beat the saber-toothed tiger Victor, he doesn't have himself, his speed is no joke. Such a pleasant decision. Because saber-toothed tigers capture mutants in the evening. They came to Slovenia and had a dinner together in a hotel. Then it's time for Gwen to be alone. Charles and Wolverine remained in the hotel, and Wolverine seemed restless, which was honestly different from what he thought. Lead the snake out of the hole, shouldn't it be the two of them secretly following behind 2.5? What is this leading the snake out of the hole? This is to send prey to Victor the saber-toothed tiger. It's okay, everything is in my hands. Charles smiled. I heard that S.H.I.E.L.D. director Nick Fury also likes to say things like this, and in the end his shield became Serpent Shield. Logan said sarcastically. We are different. Charles said in his heart not to compare me with Maha Fake. Logan gave me an expression I understood. Yes, he's darker than you, and he only has one eye, so you're different. Logan. I found that your poisonous tongue has a fight with Orolo. Quote. Speaking of this, Charles showed a sudden expression. Logan, you shouldn't be in a relationship with Orolo. No, how could it be? Logan hurriedly denied, but the confidence was not so sufficient. Well, explanation is equal to cover up, and cover up is the truth. Wandering around the city alone, Gwen behaves like a college student traveling alone. When you see a lot of fun little gifts and souvenirs, you will not hesitate to buy it. Oh, this hat can be given to Charles. Gwen looked at a vintage men's beret and thought Charles would look good in it. After negotiating the price, Gwen paid the shopkeeper and put the hat in the bag. As she walked out of the gift shop, I was greeted by a tall, bearded white man. The man wore a black knee-length wool coat and held a stainless steel wine jug close to his body, and while drinking, he said to Gwen, Miss, you need to pay more attention to safety when traveling alone. Quote. Thank you for your kindness, but I'm not alone. Gwen pretended to be calm. After speaking, he left the man with his head down, acting like an ordinary college student. The white man followed her unhurriedly. Unfamiliar with the terrain, Gwen walked to an alley where the road ahead was blocked. She turned around in panic, and the white man was already standing not far behind her. Miss, don't you want to show your abilities? Victor, the saber-toothed tiger, said with a smile. Only then did Gwen notice that his hands, like witch claws, had sharp and thick nails. What are you? Gwen asked nervously. We are the same people, don't be afraid, I will take you to a good place where you will be accomplished. Victor the saber-toothed tiger walked slowly towards Gwen. He needs to be vigilant enough, because the last time he captured a mutant girl, he didn't hurt lightly. The little girl who looks harmless to humans and animals, God knows she can burst out so powerful. So, Victor the saber-toothed tiger learned one thing. Don't take people for their faces. It is possible that the more beautiful and weak the little girl, the more deadly she will be. 22. As soon as Victor thought of this, Gwen suddenly disappeared from his eyes, and the next moment he was behind him. At the same time, kick it yourself. Victor resisted with his arm, bang, and was shocked back 4 or 5 steps. Teleportation, super power, and looks like good fighting skills. After Victor said this, he suddenly stopped. He looked around with beastly alertness. Let me think, am I being targeted by someone? Logan, is that you? Quote. Guessed half right. Charles appeared in an instant with Rogan. Logan didn't care about the special ability where Charles came from, he only felt a little sick, and came here from the hotel in an instant, making Logan, who has always been airsick, feel overwhelmed. He braced himself against the wall with one hand, restraining the feeling of vomiting with reason. Victor's gaze fell on Charles. Principal Xavier, I didn't expect to meet you here. As soon as the words fell, his left foot slammed into the ground, rushing towards Charles like a cannonball. Because of the three people on the scene, Charles is the easiest to catch. Neither the flexibility of a little girl, nor the ability to recover against the sky like Logan. To Victor's thought of taking it for granted, Charles responded with a punch. Bang! The force of the fist was like a galloping train, and the head on Victor's neck rotated 360 degrees, and his teeth were scattered all over the place. Turning his head 360 degrees and facing Charles again, Victor uttered the last syllable from his mouth. Lean. Logan, who had almost recovered, looked at Charles with fear. Who can tell him what happened? Why is Professor X, who can't help but be so fierce? He left the school after solving Stryker. Therefore, it is not known that Charles later a series of feats. Logan walked up to Victor, kicked him, and said, looks like it's enough for him to sleep for half an hour. Quote. Then let's go back to the hotel first and wait until he wakes up. Charles nodded. Seeing Charles stretching out his hand towards him, Logan jumped away in fright and waved his hand. I'll just take a taxi and go back. Quote. Okay. Charles shrugged his shoulders and let Logan feel free. The next moment, Charles returned to the hotel with Gwen and the comatose Victor. Half an hour later, Logan returned to the hotel on his front foot, and Victor woke up on his back foot. He wanted to rub his sore neck, but found himself tied to a chair by white spider silk. Do you think this can trap me? Victor said arrogantly. Charles raised his fist at him. What a familiar fist. Victor's memory went back to before his head spinned. Then the corners of his mouth twitched, and he honestly stopped moving. Oh, I think it's nice to sit here. Poof. Gwen was amused by Victor's confession. Logan aimed his fist at Victor's palm, and then Edmund's alloy steel claw popped out. Victor raised his head in the chair, and said with a look of hatred that iron is not steel. Oh my God, Logan, have you forgotten our ability? Compared to the damage we have suffered before, are you tickling me? Quote. Logan couldn't help but say, angrily stabbing the steel claw at Victor. Victor, tell me where those mutants you captured are. Victor still taunts him, thinking that his attacks are weak and his threat is like a barking family dog. He is no longer Wolverine, no longer a beast in the jungle. It's easy to go from a man to a beast, but it's hard to go from a beast to an adult. Charles patted Logan's shoulder, signaling him to relax. Logan took a few deep breaths, calmed himself down, and said, Charles, don't you have a way to read his memory? We need to find those captured mutants. Quote. Charles shook his head. At first I thought he was wearing a mind shield helmet, but it seems that he has also strengthened it over the years, and his skull has been replaced with the material of the mind shielding helmet. Logan subconsciously looked towards Victor. Victor was looking at him defiantly and said with a smile, you never want to find those mutants. Quote. An angry Logan wants to continue the torture. After seeing the Lake Alkali Dam, Stryker mutilated mutants. Logan couldn't imagine what pain the mutant captured by Victor was going through. Wait, I seem to have a way, a magic can make him know everything. Charles's eyes lit up and he called out to Rogan. It is a magic in Harry Potter called the truth spell. It was supposed to be a recipe for a truth-spitting potion, but it was too troublesome, so Voldemort created a truth spell. Charles cast a mantra spell on Victor. I saw a little bit of light, which did not enter Victor's body. In this regard, Victor did not have any abnormalities, he was still looking at the two defiantly. When Charles asked him a few questions, Victor knew everything. He wanted to shut up and say nothing. But I can't control myself. As long as Charles asked questions, he instinctively answered, and could not control it at all. Victor, who are you working for now? Essex Company. Victor said without thinking. Logan was very unfamiliar with the name, but Gwen exclaimed. Essex Company. It was a company in the biogenetic field of continental Europe. The market value of the company was not very high, but it held a lot of patents in its hands and had a high status in the biological field. Dr. Connors used to work with Essex Corporation, and it seems that Osborne also worked with them. Quote. That's all Gwen knew. She has a great track record in biology, so sometimes Dr. Connors will let her get her hands on it. Came and went, learned about the Essex Company. Charles knew more than Gwen. When he heard about the Essex Company, he thought of Nathaniel Essex, and people preferred to call him Mr. Omen. An English mutant. Top biology experts. He studies mutants like Strack Industries, but focuses on cloning technology. Logan then asked Victor where the mutants he had captured were being held. Victor gave a place name. Bled Adolescent Psychiatric Hospital. The address is located on the outskirts of a small Slovenian town called Bled. It was nominally a psychotherapy institution for adolescents. It was actually a test facility controlled by Essex. The mutants in Brad's adolescent psychiatric hospital are all powerful mutants, and Essex wants to control them and become loyal killers of the company. There are also some mutants, I don't know where they were sent. Victor said. He is only responsible for doing things according to orders, the rest is not clear. Originally, with Victor's strength, he would not be able to engage in the most basic arrest work like a peripheral member. But he just loves this kind of life. He is used to following orders, carrying them out, and then unleashing his bestiality with impunity. Only then did he feel alive. If like a normal person, or sitting in an office giving orders. That's no different from a caged beast. Logan, what to do with him? After getting the answer he needed, Charles pointed to Victor. Victor still looks like he doesn't get beaten. I want to kill him, he's lived long enough and has done countless messes. Logan's killing intent was undisguised. But he couldn't take out Victor. He knows that his self-healing ability 083 power. So know that Victor can hardly kill. Even if he is cut to pieces, it only takes a certain amount of time, and he will still appear alive in the world. I can help you finish him off. What Charles wanted was Logan's words. If Logan didn't want to kill Victor, he wouldn't be able to cross the line. After all, Victor had no feud with himself. Since Logan wants to kill Victor. All right. I'll do it yourself. Victor did not believe that Charles could kill himself, but when Charles deprived him of his ability to heal himself, Victor's expression panicked. Subsequently, Charles solved Victor with the Avadaso curse. Anyway, Mephitos already hated himself. The power of the Hell dimension does not need to be used in vain. The Avadaso curse is definitely a must-have skill for home travel to kill people and cross goods. At this moment, Mephitos, who was deep in the Hell dimension, opened his eyes. He felt that Charles had once again stolen his power. This power is actually insignificant compared to the power of the hellish dimension. However, it means a different thing. You can borrow what you want. If you don't want to borrow, you can't grab it. Mortals! How dare you blaspheme the great Lord of Hell! Mephitos screamed angrily. Feeling that Charles was deliberately humiliating himself, he decided to create a terrifying existence and go to Charles to take revenge. Before going to the Brad Adolescent Psychiatric Hospital, Charles cleaned up Victor's body. Seeing him return to the hotel, Logan asked unnaturally, Charles, how did you eliminate Victor's self-healing ability? Quote. Also, I haven't asked you, where did you get those abilities from? The power of magic, mutants have the hope of second awakening to gain the ability, this is not surprising. And there is magic in this world, Karma-Taj in the Himalayas, there are many mages there. Quote. Charles explained to Rogan. Magic is really omnipotent, anyway, all abilities can be explained by magic. Now that Charles has obtained a self-healing mutant ability, he is considering who to give it to. There is a saying, self-healing is no problem. The problem, the claws and fangs of the saber-toothed tiger Victor will not appear together with the awakening of X. Early in the morning, the mist was thick and there was a chill in the air. Charles and Gwen had already arrived at Brad's teenage psychiatric hospital first, and as for Wolverine Logan, he had come here by taxi. About a minute later, a taxi stopped here. Logan cursed and got down from the car. Nigger. Quote. What's going on? Charles asked curiously. He can use telepathy to find out what happened from the driver, but Charles doesn't like it. Previous X grants hardly enter other people's brains without permission. Charles doesn't have that moral bottom line. However, he will not steal other people's secrets frequently because of this. No one likes to deal with such people. Anyway, things that are not important, just ask, and have nothing to do with yourself. That nigger driver, when I first got in the car, he didn't dislike the distance. It turned out that halfway through, he wanted to leave me there. Logan took a deep breath. I gave him an extra $100 as you said. But this charged me another $100 after getting out of the car. Charles nodded. It's really despicable, so I don't like. Quote. After that, the taxi that hadn't driven too far crashed into a tree by itself, and the hood flipped straight up. God is punishing him, and it is not a few $100s that can be repaired. Logan made a prayer gesture at the black driver not far away. Praise be to God. Everyone, including Gwen, knew what was going on, and it must have been Charles. However, Gwen also deserves to have a driver who has to raise the fare on the way. There is a barrier in this place, can't we get in? In the place where the Brad Adolescent Psychiatric Hospital could be seen, Charles and the three were blocked from their way. An invisible barrier stands in the way. Logan tried to smash it open, but to no avail. Gwen used the ability to teleport, but still didn't go in. This barrier limited her. Even if her goal is inside the barrier, she will fail every time because she hits the barrier. I'll do it anyway. Charles thought about it, and there was probably a spell that applied to this situation. Araho Cave open. When Charles pointed his finger at the barrier, a visible opening appeared on the barrier. This was originally a lockpicking spell. It is theoretically possible to open all door locks, windows and items. In a sense, a barrier can also be seen as a closed door. I'm starting to like magic. Logan said sincerely. Gwen felt that Charles was handsome, and this method of opening the barrier was full of grace. In charge of this institution was a woman named Cecilia Reyes. She is a mutant who excels at creating barriers that block and protect. When an opening appeared in her barrier, Reyes instantly found it, and she called up the monitor and saw the Charles trio above. Reyes hurriedly sent a call for help to his superiors, and at the same time sounded the alarm of the house, asking all the mutants of the hospital to return to their rooms. At this time, there were a total of 6 young mutants in this hospital. They are the secret guest Liana Rasputin, Moonstar Danielle Moonstar, Wolf Poison Ryan Sinclair, Sunspot Roberto da Costa, Cannon Sam Guthrie, Golden Egg Fabio Medina. 6 young mutants were captured by the saber-toothed tiger Victor one after another. Among them, the Moonstar is the most knightly one. Of course, this place is called a juvenile psychiatric hospital. What Reyes told them was that they were locked up here to learn how to control themselves. This is to avoid them hurting loved ones in the world. Therefore, except for the secret guest, who is hostile to everyone, the other 5 will cooperate to receive treatment. After hearing the sound of Reyes broadcasting sunspots, moon stars, they prepare to return to their rooms. The secret guest stopped them. Guys, don't you think it's strange? I've never heard Dr. Reyes be so anxious. She always acted like a saint. Quote. Wolf Venom asked, what do you want to say? Quote. Don't pretend you don't understand anything here, there's something wrong with this psychiatric hospital, and Reyes is trapping us here with a skimming reason. You think so too, don't you? Why else would you sneak up the ventilation duct in the evening? Quote. Compared to 2 sensitive teenage girls. Sunspot, a big boy like Cannon, is more late noticed. They looked at the Wolf Venom in confusion. What? Wolf Poison sneaks up on the ventilation duct. Wouldn't that see them sleeping? Wolf Venom ignored what the boys were thinking. She looked at everyone, then nodded. Drive Reyes has secrets from us, and she always reports us to someone regularly. Quote. Also, there is a secret armed force with live ammunition outside the hospital. Hearing the secret armament, Sunspot and the others were not calm. So what are we waiting for? If there is any hope of escaping, maybe today is the best chance. The secret said. I don't want to stay here, I'll join you. Fabio the Golden Egg chooses to go out with the secret guest. The last 6 men left the hospital building together, and they quietly followed Reyes. Dr. Reyes, who has always been like a saint. At this moment, he is very restless. Therefore, the secret customer will judge that this is the best time to escape. Just as she thought, Reyes didn't pay attention to them, and didn't notice the people following behind her. Wolverine Rogan, how did he get here? Reyes muttered to himself. The shadow of the famous Tree of Man. As a former member of the ex-police, Wolverine Logan made her dare not underestimate. And beside Rogan, there are 2 other people she doesn't know, who should also be mutants. It is unclear what they are capable of. It's a big hassle anyway. She only hoped that the company's reinforcements could be faster. With her and the armament stationed outside the hospital alone, she does not necessarily have a chance of victory. Halfway through, Reyes and Charles meet together. Drive Cecilia Reyes, it looks like you're the head of this psychiatric hospital. Charles said. Reyes didn't know Charles, but that didn't get in the way of the dangerous feeling he gave her. This is a woman's intuition. She feels that Cha Li Jiao's bless is stronger than Wolverine Logan. It's not a good habit to trespass in a private place. Reyes spoke, and the roar of the SUV engine roared from the west. It was a secret army stationed outside the hospital. The reason why they were not allowed to enter the hospital was to better brainwash 6 young mutants. Imagine if you let soldiers oppress them, it will only be counterproductive. When Reyes walked towards the barrier opening, she had completely dismantled the barrier, so that the secret armament could travel unimpeded. Is there really a group of mercenaries there? Not far away, the 6 secret visitors hid in the bushes, and Sunspot exclaimed in disbelief. The secret man raised an eyebrow. I knew the woman was cheating on us, because Lockheed told me a long time ago. The Lockheed she is talking about is a puppet dragon worn on his left hand. Because the secret always said that Lockheed was his friend and would talk to himself. People will think she's crazy. Who should we help? Cannon's brain is still a little unturned. To his naive and stupid question, the secret visitor rolled his eyes in response. I think we should escape. Wolf Venom replied cautiously. The secret guest gave her another burst, looking like a big sister. Of course we're here to watch the play, and if they can't beat Dr. Reyes, we'll go up and help. Are you crazy? Why should we help people we don't know? Yuexing said. Because the one we know is a fool. It's as simple as that, the enemy of an enemy is a friend, didn't your history teacher teach you? Quote. Now all shut up, that's it. We have been locked up here for so long, don't you think they don't know our family information? Running away can't solve the problem, we need to find a backer who dares to confront Reyes and his gang. The secret guest said so, and the golden egg Fabio frowned. Then we are not going to become a tool for others to use. Quote. Even if I make a tool, I have to choose it myself, and whoever dares to hit my attention will die. The secret guest said viciously. Wolverine Rogan, I don't know how you found this place. However, you will later regret this reckless action. Quote. Reyes saw the mercenaries gathered behind him, and he had a little more confidence. Without waiting for Logan to speak, she jerked out one protective shield after another. The protective shield covers Charles, Gwen and Logan respectively, dividing the 3 into different areas. Captain Sidon, be careful. Reyes said to the mercenary leader, who nodded at the leader named Sidon. He flicked his head, and his mercenaries entered the 3 protective shields. Reyes can control the opening and closing of the shield 390 with his mind, and can choose to let people in and out. It looks like it's a break. Charles said calmly. Charles, I don't think it's a problem that can be done with money. Logan joked. After speaking, both hands clenched into fists, and the sharp Edmund alloy steel claws stretched out. He rushed towards one of the mercenaries closest to him. Let the bullet shoot at him, and the claw directly pierces this mercenary. Then came the second person. Every time it is an injury for injury style of play. Super healing ability, allowing Wolverine to give up dodging in battle. In terms of fighting ability alone, Steve of the American team can dump him more than a dozen streets. There is another one that is even more excessive than Wolverine, and that is Deadpool. Before Wade became Deadpool, he double-knifed bullets, silky as dove. After becoming Deadpool, the damage is all by resistance. After killing the 2 mercenaries, Logan discovered the problem. Because it was not a bullet that hit him, but a strong anesthetic needle. An angry Logan cursed the last sentence and fell directly to the ground. The remaining 4 mercenaries walked up to Logan and turned him over, when they suddenly saw Logan holding 2 grenades that had pulled off the safety ring. Tantra. Rumble. The grenade exploded, and none of the 4 mercenaries were spared, and blood clots were splattered on the transparent protective cover. Oh by Ka. This scene made Sunspot shout in fright. This is crazy. On the other hand, Gwen used his flexible position to subdue 6 mercenaries. Charles's method is relatively simple. 6 Avadaso spells, respectively attacked 6 people. The secret agent hiding in the bushes shrugged, looks like we don't need help. Quote. Wolf Venom said, but they're still in Dr. Reyes' shield, and we have to find a way to release them. Quote. The secret guest gave another explosion to the little stupid girl Wolf Venom. Stupid, if they can't take the protective shield, how did they get here? Don't forget the barriers around the hospital, it is impossible to enter and exit. Just as the secret said, Charles used another arrow hole to open and easily walked out of the shield. He took out Captain Seaton, who tried to draw his gun, and deprived Reyes of his abilities. In this way, he stored 2 copies of his abilities in the storage ring. When Charles was seen smiling at the bushes, the secret visitor, Sunspot and the others knew that the other party already knew that they were hiding here. The secret guest came out first, and compared to several other people, the secret guest who looked crazy was awake in the world. Hello, we are locked up here, not complicit of Dr. Reyes. I know, Secretor, Liana Rasputin. Charles smiled. Unexpectedly, in the Brad Youth Psychiatric Hospital, there were actually secret guests, sunspots and cannons and others. In the original book, they belonged to the new generation of the X-Men, the New Mutant team. The secret guest Liana is very powerful. First of all, she is a magic user. She can use the teleportation space to use the Hell Frontier as a transit station to make space jumps. Secondly, the secret guest Liana can also craft magic armor, the Soul Blade. It can even resist the invasion of psychic forces. In addition to this, the secret guest has a magic dragon, Lockheed, as a combat partner. It is not for nothing that she can become the eldest sister of 6 people. The Moon Star, Danielle Moon Star, can project the fear in the hearts of others and embody these existences. Of course, the fear that is manifested does not have the original strength, otherwise this ability is too against the sky. The most powerful thing about Moon Star is her fearful manifestation, a demon bear. It's not the same as projecting someone else's fears. The demon bear has superpower and is almost impossible to kill. Wolf Poison Lane, whose original ability was to turn herself into a wolf like a druid. After evolution, she can maintain her werewolf form, or partially werewolfize. It can even divide itself into 5 giant wolves. Sunspot Robert's ability is similar to that of a solar eclipse. Both absorb the solar energy and release it. However, sunspots are much stronger than solar eclipses, in addition to releasing scorching energy. Sunspots can also use solar energy to strengthen themselves and even fly. Cannon Sam, his body can produce chemical heat energy, which is then released through the skin. Fire yourself like a cannonball. When the cannon flies, the chemical heat energy emitted by his body can create a thick energy shield. That is, no matter what the cannon hits, he himself will not be injured. In addition, he can emit local chemical heat energy, which can be used to throw weapons. Even a small stone. It can be turned into a lethal weapon in his hands. The last golden egg, Fabio, is not a member of the New Mutant in the original book. He, like Jimmy, belongs to one of the Holy Five. The ability is to create biological embryos that cannot survive independently. When Charles called out the name of the secret guest, the secret agent immediately became vigilant. A layer of magic armor appeared on his body, and the soul blade also appeared in his hand. What are you? Judging from the battle just now, Charles is undoubtedly the strongest. Charles Xavier, the principal of Xavier's gifted junior school, is also called Professor X. Charles introduced himself. Then he added, Pio Nikolaevich Rasputin is your brother Steele, and he is in my school. Quote. That's right. The secret guest Liana is the sister of Steele. I know who you are, the leader of the mutant affirmative action movement, and like Magneto, he is the strongest mutant in the world. The secret guest said, and the magic armor and soul blade on his body were put away. Among the 6 of them, the secret is the mutant who knows the most. Others, Sunspot is a football academy athlete, Wolf Poison is a country girl, Cannon is a minor, and Moonstar doesn't know that he has awakened mutant abilities. And Fabio the Golden Egg is an ordinary high school student, and he is now more concerned about going to school. Originally, during a winter vacation trip, he was caught in this place. I don't know if I can return to a normal life in the future. Is your school recruiting special people like us? Fabio the Golden Egg asked. That's right, we now have more than 200 mutant students, and as the headmaster, I welcome you to join. Then I can go to school, and if I tell my parents that they are not going to school, they may go crazy. Fabio said. But there is one point, the secret guest said that the forces behind this hospital will harm our family. Principal Xavier, can you protect them? Charles, of course, agreed to Fabio's request. None of this actually counts as a requirement. If even the families of his own students can't be protected, what is Xavier's Genius Junior School, and what is he, the principal? Charles informed Storm Girl to come to Slovenia to pick up people, and before Storm Girl arrived, reinforcements from the Essex Company arrived first. Mr. Omen sat at the headquarters of a company in England, watching everything on the screen. As a mutant who has lived from the Middle Ages to the present day, Mr. Omen's eyes are full of vicissitudes and wisdom. Charles Xavier is actually a famous ex-Grant. Mr. Omen's face showed a look of shock. As far as he knew, X taught both legs and rarely left Xavier's school for gifted juniors. Of course, mutants have a variety of abilities, and it's not surprising that someone can cure X's legs. However, since Charles left the school, maybe he can catch this powerful alpha-level mutant. No matter how bad it is, even if it is to get a little of Charles's blood for research. That's worth more than the loss of the Bled Juvenile Psychiatric Hospital. Mr. Omen just thought of this. Suddenly, a huge rainbow bridge fell from the sky, like a waterfall of colorful light. Odin, armed with Gungnir's eternal spear, came out of the light. Charles thought of anyone, but not Odin. Is this idle egg pain running to find yourself? Your home is going to be stolen by the Dark Elves, you know. Odin did not show the strength of the old Heavenly Father, just standing there, he felt like he was facing an ancient god. Secret Guest, Sunspot, Wolfvenom and others all subconsciously showed their battle forms. Odin swept over them with only one, eyes full of endless wisdom. They're all very good fighters. Odin said. Charles looked at Odin and said, I don't know what the great Asgardian god King Odin has to come to the atrium in person. Quote. Earth, among the 9 kingdoms in Norse mythology, is called the atrium, or Midgard. At this time, Mr. Omen, who was far away in England, stood up from the front of the video. As a mutant who has lived for centuries, he was well aware of Asgard's existence. It was the place where the former rulers of the 9 kingdoms, the Asa gods, lived. God King Odin is the leader of the Asa clan. Grant actually knows the god King Odin. Mr. Omen muttered. He didn't dare to provoke the Asa god race at all, which would completely wipe out the power he had established from the world. Mephitis, the lord of the hellish dimension, also sensed Odin's arrival on Earth. Odin, that guy. Mephitos gritted his teeth. The phantom light curtain constructed in front of him shows Charles and Odin looking at each other. He couldn't wait to eat and swallow both of them alive. Odin is the top father. If in the hellish dimension, he can't beat Mephitos. However, outside the hell dimension, Mephitos is casually beaten by Odin. Mephitos' plan to invade the 9 realms and Earth was all ruined by Odin. He had spent his heart and soul creating the Saint Van Gonza Covenant. Why didn't he dare to devour those extremely evil souls? It was threatened by Odin and Gui. Because Odin told him that if he dared to devour those souls, the light of the rainbow bridge of Asgard would surely bloom in the dimension of hell. If it was just Odin and Asgard, Mephitos wouldn't be afraid. The problem is also an ancient one. Mephitos knew that he could not get any benefit, so he confessed. Karma Taj, Guichi senses Odin's arrival. But not taken seriously. Odin guards the 9 realms, Supreme Venerable protects the Earth, and the 2 are old comrades in arms. She knew that Odin would not do great damage on Earth. The mutant called Charles is kind of interesting. It actually attracted Odin's attention. Gu Yiru thought. Asgard is rich in warriors, and Odin's personality is also straightforward, and he rumbled, Professor Xavier, you should return Mjolnir to Asgard. Quote. Oh, for the hammer for my son. Charles rejected Odin without thinking, I took it by strength, why should I return it to you? Your Majesty Odin, don't you think that the responsibility for this matter is first and foremost on your son? Thor has joined some bad groups on Earth, I'm talking about the Avengers. Hearing Charles's words, Gwen's face looked strange. The Avengers, some bad group on Earth. At this time, the Avengers base. Iron Man Tony just hacked inside the Essex Company surveillance video. What was the first thing he heard? The Avengers, a bad group on Earth. Tantra. He speaks to your father like this, like a teacher saying to the father of a high school student, your son has joined a group of social scum, racing every day, drinking, and soaking up girls. Quote. Tony said very unpleasantly. Some people actually say that they are a bad group. Thor smiled awkwardly, his hammer was gone, and Odin ran to the atrium to help him get the hammer back, which already made him very faceless. Tony also hacked into the surveillance system of a nearby helicopter. Seriously, it's not the same as I imagined Odin. Black Widow Natasha said from a table behind her, afraid of causing misunderstanding, and explained to Thor, I'm not talking about looks, but pretty kind, right? Quote. You think Odin will be a grumpy old man? Thor took Natasha's words and said, actually, he is really cranky. You don't know my native family with Loki, fortunately our mother Frigga is fine. Quote. So will he make a move with Charles? Natasha asked. I was a little worried about Charles. After all, the other party is the god king of Asgard, and Odin is famous in Earth mythology. It probably will, unless he's willing to hand over the Meow Hammer. I bet $1 million and Charles will be beaten badly. Tony raised his hand and said, looking like he didn't want Charles to be beaten. At this moment, in the video, Charles is still continuing his words. It's good that Nursery joins the Avengers and deals with the Zeteri. But he shouldn't have run to Earth and meddled in the conflict between humans and mutants. Charles's accusations against Thor made Odin dissatisfied. Thor knows what he should do. Asgard once ruled the 9 realms, and we can meddle in the affairs of Earth. Professor Xavier, I see a dark revival, an erosion of the world. Thor needs to take back Mjolnir to ward off the coming darkness. Quote. Apparently, Odin, the God King, has sensed the hints of a dark revival. However, Charles would not return the hammer to Odin. Darkness recovers, and the 9 realms will fall into eternal darkness. This kind of nonsense deceives others. Where did the Dark Elves come from with such great powers? Odin and Gui joined forces, and even Mephitos had to admit it. Purple Potato Essence Thanos did not dare to attack the Earth. Take a step back and say, don't you Odin still have an ace? Your Majesty Odin, maybe you release your eldest daughter high. Charles didn't finish speaking, and the eternal spear in Odin's hand slammed into the ground. The light of the rainbow bridge is fleeting. Charles and Odin disappeared without a trace. At the Avengers base, everyone who was listening to the gossip listened to a thought. Odin's eldest daughter, do you and Loki have a sister? Tony, who was the most curious, asked. Thor showed a confused expression. I don't know, I've never heard of it, I think I don't. Thor wasn't particularly sure. Because Odin's reaction was so extreme. If Charles were talking about it, I believe Odin would not be so nervous. But Odin didn't wait for Charles to finish speaking, so he used the eternal spear to transfer both of them. This is clearly fraught with something wrong. He now wanted to ask Odin if he had a sister. If he had a sister, his native family might not be so bad. Well, maybe. On the side of the Brad Youth Psychiatric Hospital, the captain of the Essex Company Action Team asked his superiors whether to continue the mission. Seriously, mutants, they catch a lot. But Odin, who suddenly appeared, confused them. This is if it is a mutant. They had never seen such a strong sense of oppression. That's why the leader of the action team issued the request. Mr. Omen thought for a while, and finally gave the order to retreat. Because Charles is gone, it doesn't make much sense to capture mutants such as Wolverine, Secret Guest, and Sunspot. If X Grant can come back alive, then everything he has built will probably be destroyed. If X is killed by Odin, he had a chance to deal with Xavier's gifted junior school. The long life has accustomed Mr. Omen to waiting and watching. There is no need to rush into a decision. This is the merit of the immortal. 8 helicopter gunships left the place. Wolverine Rogan, who was hit by a strong anesthetic needle and blown up by a grenade, slowly woke up at this time. He subconsciously touched his aching stomach. The wound has recovered. Logan got up from the ground staggeringly. He looked around, and did not see Charles. Hey, how long did I sleep just now? Can anyone tell me it happened? Oh my god. Seeing Logan who was back on his feet, Sunspot exclaimed. Dude, didn't that grenade kill you? Do I look like I'm dead? Logan didn't have a good airway. He walked straight up to Gwen and asked, Gwen, where did Charles go? And these guys, are they mutants locked up in this hospital losses? Ideographic period. In the vast starry universe, Charles was brought here by Odin with the Rainbow Bridge. How did you know about Hela? Odin questioned. Hela, the goddess of the underworld, once followed Odin on his crusade to the Nine Kingdoms, establishing Asgard's current status. But Hela's brutal desire for conquest is like a ferocious beast born in darkness and death. Even Odin became jealous of Hela. At that time, Odin already wanted to recuperate. Therefore, after he was unable to persuade Hela, he chose to seal Hela in the underworld of Heim. For this, he even lost the entire Valkyrie Legion. After sealing Hela, Odin erased all traces of Hela, and almost no one in the Nine Kingdoms knew of Hela's existence except for Ji, the frost giant Laufey, or the oldest people of the Asa gods. People don't know unless it never happened. Charles said. At this moment, Odin moved the killing intent. If Charles simply does not return Jorinal, Odin will not necessarily have killing intentions. However, such taboos as Hela exist. He didn't want anyone to know. Thinking of this, Odin ignited a photon storm that was even more powerful than Captain Marvel. This made his whole person shine like a star. Odin raised the eternal spear and stabbed Charles. Charles took out the Mjolnir block. Both weapons are cast of Ulu metal, and although the eternal spear is a little more powerful, Charles's power can be 130 to drag planets, which makes the hammer in his hand not much inferior in a collision. Rumble. The collision of the two weapons created an extremely strong storm in the universe. The storm passed. Large swaths of meteorites have turned into powder. A quarter of a desolate and silent planet is shattered by energy. Odin held the eternal spear, which was still trembling slightly, with a solemn expression. Charles is cooler, and finally meets an opponent who can exert his full strength. What did Carol say before? Being qualified as a sandbag is eligible. Captain Marvel Carol is really resistant, there is nothing to say about that. But as an opponent, Carol can't. Carol, who has not reached the double star form, cannot be regarded as a close opponent. As soon as Odin saw Charles's fighting spirit, he knew that he was in trouble. He really didn't expect that a mutant had such great power. Charles became the main attacking player this time. He kept turning the Meow hammer in his hand, and the hammer made a sound like the roar of a monster, and the violent storm spread around. Fortunately, there are no living planets in this galaxy. Otherwise, the cosmic storm is raging, and I don't know how much damage it will cause. The Heavenly Father level has the ability to destroy a galaxy, which is really no joke. From jumping to falling, Charles slammed the hammer at Odin. Odin raised the eternal spear to block, and there was another terrifying burst of energy. Both of them are pure power types, with little skill content. Boy, you really me off. At this moment, Odin showed the strength of the veteran Heavenly Father. He held aloft the spear of eternity, and behind him were the phantoms of all Asgard. Asgard's power is all poured into the eternal spear. If this blow hits the planet, it is that the planet dozens of times larger than the Earth can be completely destroyed. It is worthy of being the God King who singled out the heavenly God group. Charles felt the energy bred on the eternal spear and sighed sincerely. Odin's spearhead stabbed Charles. Charles did not block, but activated the ability of energy absorption, allowing the violent energy to hit him. Odin obviously felt that the majestic power to destroy a planet was all destroyed in Charles's body. He is like a black hole hit. No matter how much energy is filled in, it cannot be effective. Is this also a mutant ability? Odin cut off the energy that the eternal spear continued to output, and he asked Charles a little depressed. Your Majesty Odin, you might as well guess. Charles laughed cynically. When I was a child, guess. Odin snorted coldly. However, it did not strike again. Before determining the opponent's whole cards and how to deal with it, it is very stupid to fight without stopping. There are many powerful beings in this universe, and there are also many dimensional demon gods. If they met together, all of them would fight endlessly, and the universe would have been destroyed long ago. So, when the strength reaches a certain level, everyone tests each other, determines that no one can help the other, and will use negotiation to solve the problem. Such as the negotiations between Odin, Guichi and Mephitos. Although I don't like you very much, your strength has been recognized by me. Mjolnir will stay with you. After Odin finished speaking, he disappeared into this universe in the blink of an eye. He needs to go to the planet Nevida and find the dwarf king Izu to recreate a weapon for Thor. Let Thor face the threat of the Dark Elves. It was an ordeal for Thor. The future god king of Asgard needs to grow up in the grind of blood and fire. The Nine Kingdoms settled down for too long. Thor's previous wars were petty, including against the Chitauri. The Chitauri are nothing more than a third-rate interstellar legion in the universe. The Dark Elf Malekith is barely a good opponent. Odin walked so fast that Charles was dumbfounded. Clams. Heaven kill Odin. You're taking me back. The sparkling fruit allows Charles to fly at the speed of light, but the distance to the universe is calculated in light years. He didn't even know where he had been taken by the Rainbow Bridge. Even if you keep flying, how many years will it take to return to Earth? Transfiguration magic. Charles tried it, and the farthest distance of each transfiguration was about 500,000 kilometers. This distance is stress-free on Earth. Not enough to see in the universe. In terms of the limit movement speed, it is not as fast as flying at the speed of light. Just as Charles struggled, an intergalactic Marauder's spaceship jumped out of the wormhole. Inside the spaceship, Captain Yongdu stood behind the porthole, his expression was ugly. Just now, the spacecraft captured a violent energy signal. He thought there was an interstellar war going on here. Generally, when an interstellar war ends, with countless broken ships and weapons floating in space, it's time for the Marauders to make a fortune. Who knows? He came here as fast as he could, and what he saw was a person. Earthlings like Star-Lord Peter. Hell. Yongdu cursed in his mouth, and then gave the order to retreat. The number one warrior beside Yongdu said with a face, "This guy looks the same as Xingju, we can arrest him and unload 8 pieces, just like tearing down that traitor." Quote. If it weren't for the fact that killing the face was really quite capable of fighting, Yongdu wanted to kill him with one shot. Look at this man who can survive in outer space. Are you sure we can tear him down? And not by him to dismantle the spaceship. However, it was too late for them to turn around and leave at this time, and Charles had already arrived at the main control room of the spacecraft. Yikes. In an instant, all the guns of the interstellar pirates were aimed at Charles. It can only be said that it is worthy of being a marauder. This combat literacy really can. Captain Brave, if I were you, let my men put away their guns so as not to go off. Charles sat down without seeing anything. Courage waved his hand and asked people to put the gun away. It is not that he has not dealt with such a big man with terrifying individual ability, and he has a lot of experience in this area. People didn't kill themselves in the first place. The instructions can be taken according to their needs. As long as there is no conflict of interest. Star Marauders don't care who to do business with. Bang! Suddenly, an energy bomb hit Charles. Killing Face stupidly patted his large energy rifle and said, "Captain, it may be out of fire." Courage looked at Charles, who was shot unharmed, pulled out the gun, opened fire, and blasted the head that killed the Face. A series of actions flow through the clouds. Throw the body of this idiot outside, I've had enough of him. Courage said with disgust. Charles said, "Captain Brave, you may not understand how wise your move is today." Quote. Yongdu thought that his action had gained some friendship from Charles. And what Charles really means is that this killer will start a rebellion in the future, and Courage is almost killed. Great presence, not knowing what can serve you. I brave the Udon Tower, and my marauders are at your disposal. Quote. Yongdu sat next to Charles, waved to the others, and everyone exited the main control room with interest. Charles also voiced his request and asked Yongdu to send him back to Earth. Of course, he will pay Yongdu. That is the variant ability of Victor the Saber-Toothed Tiger. With this variant, Charles is not sure if it will cause the recipient to become alienated in appearance. So, to be safe, take someone who doesn't care about appearance as a test. Courage looked at the light held in Charles's hand. Is that what you mean by pay? Courage has received all kinds of commissions or ransoms. Including but not limited to universal currency in the universe. However, this is the first time he has seen such an inexplicable light. It will make you very strong. Charles uses the ability to gift when the light melts into the body of Courage. The next moment, as a Centaurus star man, the Courage also appeared in the X-Cause sequence in his body. His fingernails were alienated, like the claws of a lion tiger, thick and sharp. 4 sharp fangs also appeared in the mouth. When this change was over, Yongdu ran to the mirror and took a look. He didn't care about this alienation change. The point is, it doesn't seem to have changed substantially. If the more your appearance changes, the stronger your strength will be. He would rather add 2 more arms to himself. At this moment, Charles pulled out Brave's matching gun and fired 3 shots at him, and Courage fell to the ground screaming. Is this what 2.5 is? You going to pay me, kill me? You think you can lead them? Quote. Courage shouted in disbelief, covering his wounds. He felt that Charles did not play his cards according to common sense. If you want to kill yourself, you can kill him in the first place, why bother? Charles threw the gun beside him and said, do you think I said that the reward for you is a joke for you? Look at your wounds, your body now has super self-healing ability. Quote. In a sense, you're almost immortal. Charles's words were shocking. He took his hand away and looked at the wound in his abdomen, which was indeed healing at a speed visible to the naked eye. The ability to heal itself almost immortally. The courage is unbelievable. As a marauder captain, his most powerful weapon is the whistle arrow, which allows him to easily destroy the soldiers of a battleship. However, the courage controlled by the whistle arrow is an ordinary person. Any charging gun can take him down. With super self-healing ability, it can be said that it completely makes up for the shortcomings, and he can be more unscrupulous. Yongdu didn't dare to imagine how strong he would be in the future. What Charles was thinking about was that Courage had been transformed into the first cosmic mutant by himself. That is, his team of marauders was tied to the mutant chariot. The power of mutants has further increased. I feel that before I return to Earth, I can take the Void Land by the way. Now the Void Land is owned by the most powerful collectors. The Void Land is the head of a group of gods. It is a collector's collection in its own right. Collectors also installed a planetary engine on the Void to use it as a spaceship, but most of the time, the Void was parked in one place. The reason why Charles wants to occupy the Void. It is to open up the 2 places of Xavier's Genius Youth School in the Void Land. Because there are too many disasters on the Earth. It won't be long before Ultron appears. After Gui ran to the Eternal God and Odin ran to Valhalla, the Earth would have more trouble. The dark latitude of Dormammu descends. Planet devourers will also come to devour planets. In addition, the Earth itself is pregnant with a group of gods. In the original book, these crises are all solved. But this world, what if it can't be solved? If people are not far away, they will have near worries. Charles felt that there was nothing wrong with making a backup plan, the situation was not right, and the whole school was immigrated to nothing. It doesn't matter to me that your Earth explodes. It's time to swing rotten. 23 No problem at all. Brave learned of Charles's idea of fighting the Void, so he told Charles about the composition of the Void Land and the power of collectors. The Void, as Charles knew, was the head of a group of celestial gods. The one who killed the celestial god group was the symbiote god Nar. The collector Tangliatovan dominates the Void. His Tivan group is spread over every corner of the Void. They recklessly mine the bones, brain tissue, and spinal fluid of the ancient gods, which are all expensive rarities in the cosmic black market. In the land of nothingness, collectors have built a huge cosmic museum closed to the public. To protect his collection, he hired space knights as guards. Those Gallardo space knights are a kind of creature and mechanical fusion guy. I don't want to admit it, but those guys are really tough. Previously, a marauder wanted to loot the collector's cargo, and he did not know that the fleet was protected by a space knight. Quote. Poor God Odin, he was destroyed by that space knight. If you want to occupy the Void, in addition to facing the outlaws of the Tivan group, you have to deal with a dozen space knights. Courage said to Charles. Charles wasn't too surprised, and it was in line with his image of an imaginary collector. The collector in the movie is weak, okay. He is a cosmic elder. Without 2 brushes, you can't keep your own museum. Spaceships travel through the vast universe. Courage brought out the best Shandar snails to entertain Charles. This is a delicacy that is famous in the universe. Charles looked at the ugly snail, but he couldn't eat it, and simply went back to his room to rest. He tried to use the energy absorbed from Odin to strengthen his psychic power. Because of the previous X grant, the power of telepathy is already the ceiling of mutants. It's like the brain is developed to the limit. There is no way to rise. However, combined with the ability of energy absorption, Charles saw another possibility. Energy absorption. The energy obtained can be used to increase strength, speed, lifespan, etc. Theoretically, it can also improve psychic power. When the psychic power is strong, the ability of telepathy is naturally enhanced. Just like the mutant Apocalypse, although the Apocalypse does not have the ability of telepathy, his psychic power far exceeds that of X teaching. And the spiritual power of the Apocalypse is likely to be improved by using the ability of energy absorption. Because it has the silver super template. Charles's strength, speed, defense, and longevity don't need to be boosted individually. Even if it is improved, compared to the ability of silver superpower, it is very little. But the absorbed energy is used to strengthen the spiritual power, and the increase is very considerable. After a wave of increase, Charles felt that even if he did not use the brainwave enhancer, his psychic power could cover half the world. However, it is still not comparable to the Apocalypse. In the movie, Apocalypse directly controls X, who wears a brainwave enhancer. It shows that the power of the mind is greater than the degree of global coverage. The main thing is that Odin cut off the energy that continues to output too quickly. Charles thought depressedly. If you absorb more, you may be able to strengthen it to the extent that your spiritual power covers the whole world. Anyway, if you can use the ability of energy absorption to strengthen your spiritual power, even if you find a direction, you must use energy absorption more in the future. One day, his telepathy can cover the entire universe, even the multiverse, and it will be fierce. After the last interstellar jump through the porthole, Charles saw the huge head of the god. The head of a celestial god, the size of the moon, is a famous void place in the universe. Illegal mining and black market trade are all over the place. At this time, there was a knock on Charles's door. The voice of the second officer Kragran came from outside. Mr. Xavier, the captain invites you to the main control room. Charles followed what Kraglan said, came to the main control room, and saw Yongdu reprimanding his crew. You idiots, if Peter were here, he would definitely have a way to get through the Tivan Group's vigilance system. What happened? Charles asked. 783 Yongdu said depressedly. Mr. Xavier, my ship has been listed by the Tivan Group as having restricted access, so I can't drive the ship to the airport of the Void Land. Quote. Seeing that Charles was puzzled, Yongdu continued to explain. I forgot to tell you that the interstellar security of the Void Land is all the responsibility of the Tivan Group. Quote. I think I probably sold something to a collector, it was a fake. Well, that's probably it. Quote. Looking at the appearance of Courage, Charles understood. The goods knew it was a fake. But still treat collectors as wrong to the big head. Collectors have a lot of money, but people are not stupid. After discovering the problem, Yongdu has long been gone. Instead of chasing a group of marauders in the interstellar for a fake, the collector made the Tivan Group unwelcome them. Forbidden to the land of nothingness. I'll take care of it. Charles put his finger on his temple, and his powerful telepathy enveloped the entire void. Under Charles's control, the staff in charge of vigilance in the Tivan Group changed the restricted access of the Valorant spacecraft to normal permissions. A series of operations made the Courage even more shocking. Charles's strength. This strength is probably not inferior to Igo. Coming out of the airport, Charles experienced the customs of the Void Land, which was very similar to Hell's Kitchen. Before he could walk out of the street, he was robbed by several aliens in strange costumes. The Courage next to Charles did not take this group seriously at all. He explained to Charles, in this place of nowhere, either minors or criminals, if a person dressed particularly neatly, it is either a big man who comes to have fun, or a big man. Quote. A big man, at the very least, there must be a convoy of 20 people, so they think you are. Think I'm a big deal. Charles did not wait for Courage to finish speaking, so he took the words. The aliens found themselves ignored and were all furious. Hurry up and get out the valuables. A fat man with a mouth full of metal teeth roared lowly, and 3 other people with weapons were also threatening Charles and the 2 of them. Courage lifted his jacket to reveal the whistle arrow pinned to his waist. Grinning, guys, is this something valuable? Quote. When the fat man with a mouth full of metal teeth saw the whistle, his fat face changed. Courage. Brave the Udon Tower. You are the marauder brave Udon Tower. Quote. He shouted, bursting out at a different speed of escape than his size. Courage whistled, and a whistle arrow with a red tail pierced 4 people in the blink of an eye. Then the whistle arrow returned to Brave's waist. It looks like they only know what scares them. Yongdu regretted. After the centaur shell was destroyed by the Baidens, are there still many centaurs in this universe? Why can't they recognize themselves by the color of their skin? Is this difficult? When Charles and Yongdu leave the place, the scavengers rush to the 4 dead people. In the void, there is a complete process from robbery to disposal of corpses. Whether dealing with the robbery, or the robber. Anyway, in the ghost place of the void land, this kind of thing will always happen. In most cases, the Tivan group does not care. Anyway, as long as it does not threaten the interests of collectors, it has nothing to do with the Tivan group. There are many places in the universe where there is order, such as the Kree Empire, such as the Shandar Star, such as Asgard, anyway, excluding the void. Charles and Courage walk in the void. For the planet that the head of the celestial god group turned into, Charles has already begun to think about the transformation plan in his heart. The Collectors Tivan group is the most powerful force in the void. The Tivan group serves collectors. Or rather, all the people in the void serve collectors. The Collectors Museum of the Universe is the most luxurious and imposing complex on the planet. Just like medieval kingdoms, the king's palace was the most luxurious. Then there was the estate of the nobility. When it comes to the civilian houses, it is full of oppression and poverty. Charles was in this place and saw a lot of old pipes, as well as exposed wires. Like crowded slums living on Earth. It's hard to imagine that this is a universe with a super high-tech level. If compared with the airport of the void land, it will make people feel a sense of separation of civilization dislocation. It would be too wasteful to tear down the Cosmos Museum, but I don't need to keep so many people like those criminals to get out early. It's perfect to tear down a slum-like area and rebuild it. Charles made a plan in his mind. It was as if the land of nothingness had already belonged to him. Right at this moment, a 3-meter-tall Space Knight walked towards them with heavy steps. Behind the Space Knight, there are dozens of guards belonging to the Tivan group. Udon Tower, great collectors want to see you. The Space Knight hotly blocked their way, and the urn sounded the airway. Yongdu raised his head to look at him. Please tell the collector that I have nothing to sell him this time. The Space Knight snorted hotly. Then I expect you better have it, otherwise a centaur may also become a collectible. The guards behind him all laughed. Collectors forbid Courage to enter the void, which in their opinion is already a very generous act. However, those who have deceived collectors and dare to step into the void again are provoking the authority of collectors. Even a rather legendary intergalactic predator should not do such a stupid thing. He and Charles were taken to the Collectors Museum. Before entering the museum, Yongdu was confiscated with a gun and whistle, while Charles had no weapons. He himself is the strongest weapon. To meet the collectors, you also need to walk through a huge glass corridor. On both sides of the promenade, collectors collect various vehicles. Charles saw Harleys on Earth, vintage Porsche sports cars, and Zeteri flying motorcycles. This is just a warehouse for the vehicle category. There are 9 more warehouses like this. In addition to small vehicles, collectors will also collect various space battleships. Everything in this cosmic museum has been collected by collectors for endless years. So, even the collector himself can't remember how many collectibles he has. The fetish of collecting is simply because the life is too long, and you need to find something to pass the time. Soon, Charles and Yongdu meet collectors who seem to be perverts. He is petting a giant goat from the planet Indigo. The giant goat is very upset with this old pervert. It screamed, and its predecessor raised and kicked the collector fiercely. The collector raised his hand to create an energy barrier that blocked the attack of the giant goat. I don't like this kind of irascible creature. The Tenjin group always likes to create this kind of thing, put it in warehouse TC-13, and let it stay with the monsters of the underworld of Heim. After the collector arranged for his Nuo Qianzhao subordinates, he looked at Charles and Yongdu. His gaze only swept over Charles. I looked at Courage. Udon Yongdu, do you remember the secret dragon egg you gave me last time, and an ugly lizard hatched in it? The collector pointed to Brave's nose and said angrily. But I did get it from the secret dragon's lair. Courage spread his hands. If it weren't for those Shandar star peculiar paint patterns, I might believe your bullshit. Courage. You deceived me. Quote. For eternal sake, give me a reason not to put you in a cage. Yongdu plucked his ears, unconcerned about the threat of collectors. Hearing that the collector wanted a reason, he simply said, my master will kill you first, this is probably a reason. Quote. Master of the Udon Tower. The proud intergalactic predator actually said that he had a master. The collector saw the reaction of the Space Knight behind him and was sure that he had heard correctly. Charles struck at this moment. He pointed to the Space Knight who had brought them here. His body was a 3-meter-tall mechanical body. The inside of the mechanical body is wrapped in a very small number of biological signs. I saw that a cross-shaped star appeared on Charles's fingertips, and a golden light, swoosh, instantly pierced the fiery heart. The heart wrapped in heavy armor is the heart of the Space Knight. Ordinary people even know this point. It is also difficult to destroy alloy armor with a thickness of more than 5 centimeters. Thus, one Space Knight can destroy an entire army of intergalactic marauders. Yongdu showed the fangs in his mouth and said, I'll deal with those ordinary soldiers. Quote. Even with super self-healing ability, he is no match for Space Knight. So, bravely bypassing the strongest of these Space Knights and rushing towards the mercenaries belonging to the Tiban group. Bang! Bang bang! Bang! The charging gun fires constantly, and Courage uses nimble movements to dodge bullets. Has the ability to mutate the saber-toothed tiger Victor. Not only self-healing ability, but also the same flexibility and strength. In just 3 breaths, Brave rushed into the mercenaries and used the claws of the Sharp 840 to destroy an entire team of mercenaries. It is done by the strength of the flesh alone. This was unthinkable before receiving the mutant ability that Charles gifted. He looked back at Charles. I saw that Charles had eliminated all the Space Knights. Collectors watched all this with some horror. What exactly do you want? Void Land, I want Void Land. Charles said truthfully. The collector had a humble smile on his face. As you wish, I can give you the Void Land, which is just a collection for me. In response to his thing, Charles shot light from his fingertips. He can take out collectors and grab the void. Why let a universe elder go? Isn't this leaving yourself with consequences? However, Charles snorted softly, and the laser light he used failed to kill the collector. An energy barrier appeared outside the collector's body, blocking the laser light. The collector of the dagger also put away the hypocritical humility. He took off his coat of unknown animal fur and said, as an existence who has lived for an unknown number of years, I collect everything in the universe, do you think I won't enhance myself with those things? Quote. On the collector's left arm is a quaint gauntlet. It has runes similar to the Lune script. It looks like a treasure from Asgard. This is indeed the case. It's just that the history of this arm guard is extremely old, dating back to the time of Odin's father, King Bor. The Lune magic text on the gauntlet can give the holder an increase in strength, speed, defense, etc. The collector flips the runes above. I saw that the countless rays of light on his arms were like muscle fibers, forming an arm outline composed of light and shadow. He punched Charles with a punch of more than 70 tons. The fist hits Charles. Kinetic energy dissipates invisibility. That's it. Charles said disgustedly. It is said that no matter how small a fly is, it is meat, but it is an artifact in Asgard. Just use it for you. Never mind. Let's kill it. The province saw the bad heart. Charles did not give the collector time to react this time, and with a punch, he did not have time to flick the runes on his arm. Kill the collector, and the arm naturally falls into Charles's hands. The moment he got the arm guard, Charles had information about the arm guard in his mind. The Destiny Arm, or Norn Arm, as it can also be called. It was cast by the 3 goddesses of Norn. Uld, the goddess of the past, of the director, cast the prototype of the arm guard. Verdant, the goddess of the now director, inscribed the text of Lucine magic, Cebj. Shikoti, the goddess of the future, of the director, injects magic into the arm guard. It allows the holder to have the power of the Jotun giant, the speed of the wind elf, the blessing of fate, and the movement of the rainbow bridge. The first 3 abilities are chicken ribs for Charles. The movement of the Rainbow Bridge was violent. Why the Asgardians win respect in the universe is not just because of Odin's strength and the warlike nature of the Asgardians. Powerful and belligerent are just part of the reason. And the level of technology in Asgard is not suitable for interstellar warfare in itself. The reason Asgard doesn't need starships is simple. That is the Rainbow Bridge. The magic side's ability to move was played to the extreme by the group of reckless men. Asgard's Rainbow Bridge can reach any corner of the universe, including dimensional worlds. That is, if the Kree Empire went to war against Asgard. Asgard does not need to fight interstellar wars with the Krees. The Rainbow Bridge directly smacked them in the face and turned the supreme wisdom over. The Destiny Arm provides movement of the Rainbow Bridge. Charles can use the Rainbow Bridge to return to Earth in an instant. This thing is much better than the interstellar jump of the space battleship. Of course, Charles can't go back to Earth yet. The Collector and the Space Knight were killed, but the Tivan group still existed in the void. Yondu and his marauders can't fight the Tivan group entrenched in the void. Charles arrives at the museum's main control room and releases a video to everyone in the void that he takes over the void. Miners in the void can stay. He needs people to rebuild the void. The criminals can get out. He gave all the criminals 2 days to leave the void within 2 days, or else they would all be killed. As for the Tivan group, Charles needs a security force to maintain law and order and the spaceport. The Tivan group can choose allegiance. There is also the option to die. Not surprisingly, most people choose the latter. Now that the Collector and Space Knight are dead, the top of the Tivan group feels that they can take over the void. No one mourns the death of the Collector. All everyone thinks about is how to fight for power. In one day, Charles eliminated all the top members of the Tivan group, including 70% of the armed forces. The rest are either unappreciated grassroots security guards or civilian employees. How could these people still have a temper against Charles? Anyway, who does the root is not dry. After completely subjugating the Tivan group, Charles promoted a few smart and loyal ones and began to plan the reconstruction of the void. When Charles was in the universe, the 9 kingdoms began to be in a straight line. This is also the phenomenon of 9 stars in a row. The Dark Elf Malekis invaded Asgard. Odin originally wanted to use the invasion of the Dark Elves as a tempering of Thor. However, his connivance and momentary inattention led to the destruction of Queen Frigga being killed by the warriors. This made Odin, who already had little life, regretted. At the same time, a little frustrated. Is it my own mistake? Thor now had his own new weapon, the Storm Tomahawk, which Odin had designed for him. When Thor understood the true meaning of Thor and was no longer a hammer god, he is qualified to use this Storm Tomahawk of the same level as the Eternal Gun. But Charles snatched Mjolnir. Odin had to create the Storm Tomahawk in advance. This wave of Thor can be regarded as an epic enhancement in the early days. In order to avenge his mother Frigga, Thor and Loki run to Marikis to avenge him. Malekis removed the etheric particles from Jane Fox's body. The battle between Thor and Malekis officially begins. Because the 9 kingdoms connected the city in a straight line, the boundary of time and space became blurred at this moment. Tal and Malekith went from Asgard, to Jotunheim, to Niflheim, and then to Greenwich in the atrium. The Dark Elves' huge battleships also appeared in Greenwich. Eventually, before Iron Man Tony arrives in Greenwich, Thor chops him to death with a Storm Tomahawk. It looks like another alien invasion. Tony arrived in Greenwich, and the armor on his head faded, revealing his face. Thor, I really have to say that you have a cool axe. Your original hammer was too small, that doesn't fit my stereotype of an Asgardian. Tony was still chattering, and Thor said to him, I think you can help destroy the remaining Dark Elves. Quote. My god, you call these guys elves, which is even more inconsistent with my stereotype of elves. Tony said as he put his helmet back on. Helped solve the remaining Dark Elves. After the end of the war in Greenwich, the Essex Company in continental Europe used means and bribes to obtain 2 complete Dark Elf corpses. Unlike humans and mutants, the Dark Elf's genes may be able to take his research a big step forward. Meanwhile, Xavier Genius Jr. Academy. Facing a big problem. Moonstar Daniel, her uncontrolled ability projected fear in everyone's hearts. For example, Wolverine Logan's fear, that is Stryker. Stryker in a pilot's costume. Storm Girl hates spiders, and a wolfdog-sized human-faced spider appears in the academy. There is also a monster made of magma, which wreaks havoc on the academy meadow. After a night of tossing, Storm decides to let Jimmy accompany Moonstar. Jimmy can eliminate the mutant's mutant ability, which can only be used until Moonstar can control his own ability. However, after the evening, monsters still appeared in the school. A ghoul-like monster attacks the student, and Laser Eye hears the student's exclamation, and he solves the monster. When he saw Storm Girl, Logan and the others who also heard the movement and got up from the bed, he said, "There are monsters in the academy again." Quote. "This can't be, the force field around Jimmy can curb the mutant ability." Storm Girl said. "Jimmy's ability is obvious to all, even if she, or the Beast Hank, will be curbed by the force field mutant ability." At this time, Jean rushed down from upstairs and said, "Orlo, that human-faced spider has appeared upstairs again." Quote. When she heard the spider, Storm Girl's neck shrank unnaturally. Beast Hank and Steels came from the other side. They also found something strange, although it was hammered into a puddle of mud by Steel Lux. Storm Girl decides to go and call Moonstar. This ability is too buggy. There are more than 200 students in the school, and they don't know what the fear in each student's heart is. If even Jimmy can't contain the Moonstar's ability, they may have to rearrange a place for the Moonstar. For example, on an island that is inaccessible to people. Of course, there is no way around this. Open the door and enter the Moonstar's room, and the moment you enter the room, the blue hair on the Beast Hank keeps disappearing. When he became human again, he was polite. Apparently, Jimmy's force field to contain mutants has not disappeared. Hearing everyone come in, Yuexing woke up slowly, wiped his sleepy eyes, and asked timidly, "Ms. Monroe, am I causing trouble again?" Quote. Storm didn't know how to answer her. The Laser Eye, who was standing outside the door, shot a monster with a laser and said, "It doesn't look like it's your problem this time." Quote. The Moonstar's ability can be projected, with the fear of the human heart. This only happens when she has nightmares. Or when emotions are out of control. Everything is normal with the Moonstar now. Plus Jimmy's ability to curb mutants. So the Laser Eye speculates that this is not the cause of the Moonstar. Tantra. Logan slammed the door on his head. "I probably know what's going on. Before I went to find Charles in Europe, Charles offended a hell demon. He said this in small talk. I didn't care at the time. It's that hell devil. Since it was determined that it was not the reason for the Moonstar, everyone's thinking was clear. Since the monsters that appear in the school are all creatures of the hell dimension, let's beat them back to hell." Storm asks Sky, Secretor, Poppy the Iceman and others to gather the students on the lawn outside. This avoids fighting in tight environments. After a night of fighting, the school returned to calm when the sun rose again the next day. It seems that creatures in the hellish dimension are quite afraid of the sun. Hank said, dragging his tired body. Although except for a few students at the beginning, most of them are fine. However, tossing 2 nights in a row is a big drain on them. If only this happened for another night. I don't know what will happen. The creatures of the hell dimension are not afraid of the sun, but under the sun, their strength will be greatly reduced. The Secret said. Just then, a rainbow bridge appeared, and Charles returned from the void. Looks like my school is in trouble. Charles saw the frowning crowd and asked the people. Charles. Jean rushed forward and gave Charles a hug. Wolverine Logan smoked a cigar and said, "I knew you weren't so easy to kill. Did that Odin bring you back to Asgard as a guest?" Quote. That's fine. Charles said that he had been thrown into the universe by him. But it's also a blessing in disguise. Conquered the void and also received a fate arm. He has already asked Yongdu to sail the void to the solar system. If the distance is relatively close, perhaps the ability of mutants can establish a relatively complete teleportation mechanism. This thing must have something to do with distance. Charles's phantom transfiguration has a maximum teleportation distance of 500,000 kilometers. The distance from the Earth to the Moon is less than 390,000 kilometers. He can use phantom transfiguration to reach the Moon, 950, directly from the Earth, but he can't move to Jupiter in an instant. Of course, none of this matters now. Back in his office, Charles had a small meeting with everyone. Learn about the current situation of the planet. Aliens called the Dark Elves appear in Greenwich, but the crisis is over. As for where the etheric particles went, Storm Girl, they don't know. In the Thor 2 films, Sif brought ether particles to collectors. Because Odin believes that the two Infinity Stones should not be kept in one place. Asgard already has the Cosmic Cube, the Space Gem. So choose to send the Reality Gem ether particles out. Now that the collector has been killed, there will be a new candidate for Odin. Charles did not covet the Infinity Stones. Because whoever collects the Infinity Gems will be targeted by purple potato essence. He now only cares about his own school. Mephitos actually engaged a bunch of hell demons to attack his school. He must return a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye. Charles, are we going to deal with those hellish monsters all the time? Laser Eye asked. Charles shook his head. I'm going to solve this problem at the root, but before I do that, I have to get Mephitos into a big problem. The crowd was confused by Charles's big trouble. Charles used telepathy to find Johnny Blaze, who is Mephitos' agent on Earth. Johnny is still Mephitos' agent. However, Johnny gained the power of the Eye of Judgment to possess a complete spirit of vengeance. The so-called spirit of vengeance is the source of power for the evil spirit knight. Mephitos uses powerful infernal demons to create vengeance spirits, and only in this way can those powerful infernal demons show their full power on Earth. The demons he sent to attack Xavier's Genius Youth School were just ordinary hell demons. Because demons with powerful magical powers cannot enter the world from the hellish dimension. Like him, he will be ostracized by the law. It should also be noted here that the spirit of vengeance fused with Johnny Blaze is an ancient elemental demon called Zatanos. Mephitos was unable to restrain the power of Zatanos. This is also the reason why the evil spirit rider betrayed Mephitos and even became Mephitos' enemy, and Mephitos had nothing to do. He couldn't take back Johnny's vengeful spirit. Those who send it out will not come back. Continental, Silver Hand Bar. Charles uses the apparition transfiguration to come to this place, a rather Viking-age-style bar. Even the wine glasses are large oak glasses. Charles asked for a puree beer and sat down next to Johnny. Johnny looked at him, and his pupils contracted subconsciously. When he transformed into an evil spirit knight, his thinking was still his own, but after the transformation, he was more manic and violent. So he remembered Charles, and was scared. Do you have something going on? Johnny asked unnaturally. Let me tell you something, to be precise, to restore your erased memory. Charles said with a smile. Then he took a long sip of beer and let the bubbles of beer stimulate his taste buds. Before becoming a ghost rider, Johnny was a motorcycle stunt rider. His father was also a stunt driver. The elder Blazer died soon because of cancer. Mephitos promised him to restore the elder Blaze to health, and as a blackmail, Johnny signed a contract to become a ghost knight. In fact, Mephitos fulfilled the conditions of the covenant. He wiped out the cancer cells in Blaze Sr.'s body. Overnight, the elder Blaze became alive again. But Mephitos, who was good at playing with humanity, killed the elder Blaze in a later stunt. In order to make Johnny loyal to himself, Mephitos sealed what Johnny saw. At that time, Johnny did not get the complete spirit of vengeance, and he would be casually taken by Mephitos. Charles put his finger on his temple, and with the ability of telepathy, he uncovered Johnny's dusty memory about that paragraph. It was a grand stunt moto exhibition race. The performance was packed and countless people chanted the name of Blaze Sr. Johnny was also on the spot to watch. Having recovered from cancer, Blaze Sr., believing that he was the one who could overcome death, performed a stunt of unprecedented difficulty. In that stunt, the elder Blaze failed to perform and died unexpectedly. This is something Johnny has always known. However, when Charles unveiled his dusty memories, he saw the old gentleman like Mephitos in the audience. Father's final stunt has been a success. You only need to complete the movement of landing the motorcycle. Johnny himself is a stunt motorcycle rider. He can see that there is no problem with the angle of the motorcycle. With his father's experience and strength, this is already a 100% successful performance. However, Mephitos waved his palm and changed 1.8 to change the angle at which the motorcycle landed. The next moment, it was the scene of the tragedy. Bang! Johnny of the Silver Hand Bar slammed the oak wine glass on the bar, startling everyone. Mephitos. He gritted his teeth and made a sound of serenity. He finally understood that Mephitos had deceived him. All along, he thought it was his father's own mistake. Mephitos told him that according to the contract he cured the old Blaze's cancer. As for the old Blaze's own death, it was self-inflicted and had nothing to do with him. Johnny believed the argument. He didn't know until today that it was all done by Mephitos. At this moment, Johnny has a boundless hatred for Mephitos in his heart. Mephitos, who is in the hell dimension, is already night on earth when he senses the betrayal of Johnny, the evil spirit knight. Johnny, who turned into a ghost rider, did not hunt souls as Mephitos requested. Enraged, Mephitos wants to take back the spirit of vengeance, only to discover that he has lost control of the ghost knight. There is no way to deprive the evil spirit knight of his power. Being caught off guard by this sudden upheaval, Mephitos jumped to his feet frantically, and the furious energy shot around, and I don't know how many low-level demons were shocked to death. He made an agent on Earth. In the end, this agent betrayed himself and became his own enemy. Is this a thing? Who is against me? Mephitos does not think of it as the Ancient One, or Odin. Because there is an agreement between them, as long as the hellish dimension and the human world remain peaceful, they will not interfere with each other. Yi and Odin, it is impossible to suddenly tear up the agreement. Mephitos summons his magic, and he sees Johnny, who has become an evil knight, speeding down the road on a hell motorcycle. The engine let out a furious howl. Just like Johnny 25's heart at this time, anger boiled in his chest. Mephitos further urged the magic. The surrounding scenery seems to go back in time, constantly going backwards. Travel back in time to the moment when Johnny became a ghost rider. Time goes on. When Johnny arrived alone, he borrowed alcohol to relieve his worries. Continuing further, Morpheus saw Charles at the Silver Hand bar. This is just what happened before Mephitos used his magic to watch. It belongs to an immutable past. It is only the Agamotto eye of the Supreme Venerable that time can be turned back in the true sense. But it is in this immutable past. Charles in the picture suddenly looked in the direction of Mephitos and said, "This is just the beginning." Quote. Apparently Charles used a little magic. Mephitos was furious. It turns out that everything is the ghost of Charles Xavier, who plotted against his agent in the world. Not only that, but a mortal actually tried to threaten himself. Abominable. A mere mortal actually dared to provoke the majesty of the great Hell Lord. Quote. Mephitos gritted his teeth, anger gushing out of his eyes. He decided to consume his followers on Earth and make demons with powerful magical powers truly descend on Earth through sacrifice. You must know that in Eagle Sauce, there are many such messy evil god believers. Many so-called evil gods are demons, or dimensional demon gods. The devil may also defend his own organization of believers. The dimensional demon gods basically disdained their disciples, and they didn't have any control. But these people will still kneel and lick the evil gods. It's like Charles has seen those Jingri and the like in his previous life. Mainly a slut. At this point, Mephitos needed the believer to sacrifice and deliver a little miracle or revelation. Believers will be like flies that smell the smell, swarming together. The price of sacrifice through death. Let powerful demons descend on earth without being repelled by the law. Just as Mephitos was giving a revelation to the believers. Charles has come to the border of hell. With him is the secret guest Liana. The teleportation ability of the secret guest can use the hell frontier as a transit station. But she never stopped at the border of hell. When the secret guest was very young, she awakened the mutant ability, which caused her to accidentally teleport to the hell frontier. Velasco, the demon of the border of hell, imprisons the secret guest and teaches her dark magic. The purpose is to make the secret agent become his own human agent. But years later, the secret escaped from the border of hell after a neglect by Velasco. Since then, the secret visitor has used teleportation skills to use the hell frontier as a brief jump. She didn't dare to stay in this place for too long. Otherwise, Velasco will follow the fluctuations of his soul and find him. Charles asks the secret guest Liana to follow him, which makes the secret guest very scared, including the magical baby dragon Lockheed beside her, who is also nervous and flying. Lockheed is the Muppet dragon that the secret agent wears on his hand. When the secret unleashes the power of dark magic or comes to the frontier of hell, Lockheed reverts to the form of a magical baby dragon. Lockheed, don't be afraid, we can deal with that demon. The secret guest comforted the magic baby dragon. The little one is still nervous. In its perception, Velasco is the most powerful demon. In fact, Velasco can only be regarded as a demon with powerful magical powers. In the hell dimension, this demon is like a lord. Ruled by Mephitos. Since Charles came to the hell frontier and borrowed the ability of the secret guest, he definitely couldn't just look for Mephitos. By the way, the hidden dangers on the secret customer's side were solved together. As a payment to a secret client. After all, if he doesn't solve Velasco, he will attack the secret customer first. It's like a time bomb, early blow up and early will blow up. Let me see who's back, my little Liana, it's not a good habit to sneak away. Suddenly, a huge demon with red skin crawled out of the hell magma. He shook the magma on his body and looked viciously at the secret guest. The secret guest and the magical baby dragon Lockheed all subconsciously shrunk behind Charles. 187. Only then did Velasco notice Charles. Handsome and handsome looks do not conform to the aesthetics of the hellish dimension, they prefer hideous muscles, huge demon horns, and if there are many inhuman characteristics on the body. That's perfect. Velasco is such a demon, his exposed upper body muscles are like pieces of iron, full of power. His body was covered with scars that looked like meritorious service medals. Above his head are two demon horns that resemble crowns. In addition to this, Velasco has standard, flaming demon wings behind him. If not for an arm eaten by Mephitos. In the hellish dimension, he is a demon with a shape that can score 90 points. What are you? Velasco asked angrily. As you can see, Liana attends my school and I am now his principal. Charles raised his head slightly so that he could look at Velasco. Hear Charles's introduction. The secret guest couldn't help but pout. She and this principal have only met 3 times. Everything in the school is the care of the storm girl, how can he be embarrassed to introduce himself like this? Is it by thick skin? Charles didn't know what the secret guest was thinking, or else he would have corrected her thoughts. I obviously rely on having money. Velasco laughed angrily at the tiny little bug in front of him. A small human being, who didn't know how much to eat every year, actually spoke to himself in such a tone. I've made a decision. Velasco straightened his chest and said. I'll eat you first, throw your soul into a flame that burns your soul, and then I'll eat Liana. I once wanted her to be my substitute on Earth, but she rejected my kindness. You know how rare it should be for a demon's kindness, you know. Quote. Oh, and that little dragon. It's too small to be a small snack. Quote. Lockheed, the magical baby dragon pointed at by Velasco, let out a mournful cry. The flapping of the 2 wings behind him slowed down a lot. It's like a person who is soft in the face of fear, and it has begun to fly unsteadily. Charles thought for a moment and said to the secret guest, close your eyes. Quote. Then the next moment, Charles activated the speed of light ability. His ferocious punch shattered Velasco's chest. Another punch followed. Explode into blood. Charles used a magic barrier so that blood would not drip on him. The secret visitor opened his eyes and saw this disgusting scene. Tantra. You knocked out Velasco. Quote. I told you to close your eyes. Char said. Do you think I'm a rookie who hasn't seen blood? You might be able to scare Moonstar to cry, but I was locked up at the border of hell when I was 7 years old. The secret visitor gave Charles a middle finger. If you swear again, I will punish you for not speaking for a day. If you do any more indecent movements, I'll keep you standing on the school lawn for a day. Charles said. He felt that a quality education course should be introduced in schools. For example, the secret guest, a thorn like John the Burning Man, should be well educated. And Clarice, the little one, never knew what respect was for himself. And the secret snorted, but did not dare to continue to raise the middle finger. From the border of hell to where Mephitos is, you have to cross the boundless frontier. The hell dimension is also like the earth, with mountains, rivers and seas. But not ordinary mountains, rivers and seas. There are towering black peaks that are submerged in the blood cloud, and the entire mountain is composed of peculiar black ore, which can absorb all light. So much so that the whole mountain looks like someone has painted a black ink on the oil painting from a distance. The secret man who flew with Charles said, Lockheed told me that there is a strong demon on that mountain no less than Velasco, and he is called the Shadow King. Quote. Charles's heart moved. Shadow King. This is one of the enemies of X in the X-Police comics. The Shadow King is a psionic entity that can possess anyone. I didn't expect this thing to be a demon in the Hell dimension. Since it is an enemy in the comics, it is not to be missed when walking by, but it is better to kill the matter. So Charles walked into the mountain. His powerful spiritual power is the most delicious food for the Shadow King. The Shadow King is everywhere in the darkness, and he makes strange and gloomy sounds. Such delicious food, just delivered to the door obediently. I have a feeling that if I eat you, I will become the most powerful demon in the Hell dimension. Second only to Lord Mephitos. Quote. This kind of devil, which is relatively dirty, is generally instigated. Shadow King is like that. Feeling that eating Charles can become the most powerful demon, he has to add at the end, for fear that Mephitos will hear his voice. In other words, Velasco even openly rebelled against Mephitos. Charles's process of solving the Shadow King did not go well. Because the Shadow King exists in the form of a spirit body, he is immune to physical attacks. Charles's use of psychic power to strangle, or the use of the Avadaso curse, could not directly kill such a huge spirit body. In the end, the Shadow King escaped into the body of the magical baby dragon Lockheed. He originally wanted to get into the body of the secret guest. However, the secret has the property of being immune to all psychic abilities. The Shadow King's escape plan failed, so he could only retreat to the second place and chose Lockheed. Charles can't kill Lockheed to force out the Shadow King. He could only temporarily set up a spiritual cage and lock up the Shadow King inside, and then deal with the Shadow King after his spiritual power surpassed the apocalypse. Leaving the Black Peak, they saw a basin invaded by endless evil spirits. It is also inhabited by powerful demons. There is also the Sea of Endless Magma, which is full of flame demons, and a flame demon hundreds of meters high rules the ocean. He is Mephitos' #1 fighter. Charles deliberately provoked the Yan demon and allowed the Yan demon to constantly attack him. Boom. Charles uses energy absorption to charge here. If you change to another demon, you may turn around and run away after realizing that the situation is wrong. There are a lot of such treacherous guys in the hellish dimension. Yan devil belongs to the other extreme. The degree of a rib is the same as that of Steel Lux. He doesn't know why he can't kill Charles, but it doesn't matter. If you can't die, it means that your attack is not strong enough. So he continued to swing the flame hammer, booming, and smashed into Charles like a hammer. What is Principal Xavier doing? The secret visitor looked confused and asked Lockheed. Lockheed let out 2 childish dragon roars, indicating that he didn't understand either. At this moment, many flame demons pounced on her. These demons who had just crawled out of the magma sea belonged to the lowest level demons, and they could instinctively fear the fierce aura emitted by the flame demons. Therefore, they are all far away from the Yan demon, and it just so happens that the secret guest is also far away. Tantra. A bunch of things that can't be killed. Quote. The secret guest scolded with an evil, Zhao's heart. A low-level demon like this, she didn't know how much she had killed before. Anyway, you can't kill it endlessly. The magic armor was attached to the secret guest, and the soul blade appeared in her hand to judge. Her soul blade cannot cause fatal damage to humans. If it is to cut a person, at most it can only make that person unconscious. If you hit it multiple times, it will only hurt the soul. However, for hell demons are magical creatures, the lethality of the soul blade is beyond doubt. The secret guest is like the scythe of death, and with the magical baby dragon Lockheed, she constantly harvests the flame demons that try to attack her. For those who did not attack her, the secret guests did not care. Because the flame demon can never finish killing. This thing is chopped up and dropped in the sea of magma, and in a few years, a new flame demon will be born. Just as the secret guest was killing these demons, the sky of the hell dimension suddenly cracked. What does it look like when the sky cracks? Before today, the secret guest did not know, and she may have said all kinds of conjectures. But now she saw it. The sky of the hell dimension was filled with boundless blood clouds. At this time, the sky seemed to be cut out of a ravine by a giant sword. This ravine is the most extreme black and has no other color. From inside the ravine, the same black dimensional storm blew out, sweeping through the blood clouds on both sides. Mephith's demonic true body descended from it. It is about 3 meters tall, and it does not appear particularly tall. Nor is he as burly as Velasco. He was like the most ordinary male demon, with only a pair of demon wings inscribed with obscure charms on his back, which looked slightly special. The terrifying aura exuding from Mephitos, even if they were very far apart, made the secret guest feel suffocated. Lockheed stopped on the shoulder of the secret guest, his head and wings were stretched up, and he did not even dare to breathe. Not to mention those flame demons, they all trembled and did not dare to move. The flame on his body seemed to be extinguished at any moment. Mephitos' eyes were unusually cold, and looking at Charles was like looking at a dead man. 413 He never thought of it. Charles actually dared to run to the hell dimension to send him to death. This is his territory. If it was on Earth, he would have nothing to do with Charles. Just like before he wanted Charles to deal with the Black Devil, Charles refused his proposal, and Mephitos was so hated that he couldn't do anything about it. Back to the hell dimension, it is also a conspiracy to send demons to deal with Xavier's genius youth school. Well, now, the Lord has run to the hell dimension. In this place, he can reach the level of a single universe. Even if the celestial god group came to the hell dimension, he was not daunted. Odin comes to the hell dimension, and he can beat Odin out. A mutant, what is it? Valeroka. Mephitos said. Valeroka is the name of the flame demon. When the Yan demon heard Mephitos calling himself, he immediately hammered the flame into the magma, and said in a respectful gesture, "My lord, what are you calling me for?" Quote. "Leave this person to me." Mephitos said. CGDI Yan demon listened to the great joy, pointed to the Charles urn and said angrily, "Little worm, you are dead, the great lord will personally destroy you." Quote. Charles wanted to call him an idiot. But on second thought, this idiot contributed a lot of energy to himself. Forget it, don't scold him. What's more, there are your own students watching from the side, and it's not good to scold people. Charles's gaze fell on Mephitos, and he suddenly thought of a good idea. If you let Mephitos attack him, wouldn't the speed at which he accumulate energy with energy absorption be greatly improved? Anyway, Charles knew from the beginning that it was impossible to destroy Mephitos by hitting the hell dimension. At most, teach Mephitos a lesson. Let Mephitos be jealous of his own strength and prevent him from continuing to use insidious means to find trouble. Since that's the case, then let Mephitos attack himself. 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 birds with 1 stone, 2 stones with 1 stone. At the thought of this idea, Charles couldn't help but smile. Mephitos saw the smile on Charles's face and, not knowing why, had a bad premonition. Just as he frowned, Charles took the lead in speaking. Mephitos, how about I come to negotiate a deal with you? I will stand still and let you attack me, and if your attack satisfies me, I will leave the hell dimension. Quote. If I'm not satisfied, I'll start killing from the stupid big guy below and kill all those powerful demons in the hell dimension. Although in the hell dimension, demons will continue to be born, and there will be new demons with powerful magical powers. But such a loss, I think hundreds of thousands of years, cannot be recovered. Quote. What kind of deal did Mephitos think Charles was proposing? Stand still and let yourself attack. Hee. That's it. It is also known as the strongest brain on Earth. Stupid mutant, you don't have a chance to leave the hell dimension. Mephitos laughed angrily. Charles dislikes when people swear at all, especially when they scold themselves. Mephitos, I need to warn you that as an ancient demon, swearing is not a good habit. So, this is a warning. Quote. Charles slammed his fist at the flame demon. Yan demon's subconscious blocking. After a loud boom sound, Yan devil let out a heart-rending roar. One of his arms was smashed abruptly by Charles. The power of Bai Yin Dakao to deal with the Yan devil can be said to have no pressure. Seeing that his number 1 battle would be severely damaged by Charles, Mephitos was also angry. He raised a hand, and the power of the hell dimension continued to gather. When he pointed his hand at Charles, a terrifying black death light shot out. Such a light is enough to kill thousands of demons in an instant. Or even wipe out a city with a population of 1 million on Earth. This is the purest use of black magic. In the face of such an attack, the corners of Charles's mouth slightly provoked. As he said himself, he couldn't move, and let the Black Death light hit him. Mephitos seemed to have foreseen Charles's death. Even Odin didn't dare to face himself so much. But Mephitos was wrong. Charles bathed in the Black Death light, unmoved. Energy absorption, this ability constantly absorbs evil energy from Mephitos. Charles felt that if it was the Black Emperor Sebastian, he would definitely not be able to absorb energy as unscrupulously as himself. Mephitos in the Hell dimension is, after all, a single universe level. No matter how powerful an ability is, there should be an upper limit. For example, Black Emperor Sebastian is the strength of the planet level superior. Then, he can absorb the attacks of the Heavenly Father, even if it is the limit. In the face of the words of an old Heavenly Father like Odin, he will still be killed. In the face of the monolithic universe-level Mephitos, he can only lead the neck to be killed. Charles, on the other hand, has a silver supermodel, and he is now at the level of a single universe. Mephitos's attack simply could not reach the upper limit of the ability of energy absorption. At the very least, it takes the power of the Phoenix, the power of Chaos, or the Infinity Gauntlet Thanos to exceed the threshold. At first, Mephitos behaved unavoidably towards Charles like looking at an idiot. But as the master of the hellish dimension, Mephitos was full of demonic cunning in his bones, and it only took him a short time before he realized that something was wrong. Around Charles's body, covering the surface of the skin, there seemed to be a strange force field. This force field is constantly absorbing black dead light. Mephitos felt that his attack was not like hitting an entity, but like attacking a cosmic black hole. So, Mephitos made the same decision as Odin and stopped the attack. Now it was Charles's turn to be dissatisfied. Well, I've just started, the beginning, can't you? You Hell Dimension demon god is a bit illusory. Mephitos, don't forget, our deal. Charles complained. Mephitos' expression stiffened. Who made a deal with you? But when he heard Charles's second words, okay, prodded. Because that's what Charles said in the second sentence. You don't want your demons to die either. The secret thought that there would be a century war, which he thought would eventually become a one-sided oppression. Finally, when Charles felt close to the upper limit of energy absorption, he let Mephitos go. He couldn't beat Mephitos anyway. In the Hell dimension, Mephitos is still a little stronger, but the strength is very limited. Charles has energy absorption, and Mephitos can't hurt Charles. Charles couldn't hurt Mephitos either. If he really fights desperately, in the end, it is estimated that Charles looks like he was beaten badly, but in fact he was not injured. Mephitos looks like nothing to lose, but he will have a lot to lose. I believe that after this battle, Mephitos will learn to behave. After leaving the Hell dimension and returning to school, Charles was going to strengthen a wave of psychic power, but when he took out his mobile phone, he saw Jessica looking for a lot of text messages for himself. When he was in the universe, the mobile phone naturally had no signal. So Jessica called him and couldn't get through at all. After returning to Earth, Charles was busy dealing with Mephitos again, running to the Hell dimension, but there was still no signal. Jessica had to contact Charles via text. Charles returned to Jessica with a right away. Kana Detective Agency. Jessica saw the reply on her phone, and her mood suddenly improved. She was worried about death. At first, Charles didn't contact himself. She thought Charles was busy and didn't bother Charles. After all, at that time, I had just found the people behind the death threats and were looking for evidence. Later, I called Charles and found that Charles could not be contacted. Because knowing that Charles is a mutant, she also thought something had happened to Charles. Because Stryker's research on mutants was exposed before, the world really recognized mutants. After the establishment of the Mutant Independent Kingdom, news about mutants being persecuted and used for research appears frequently. While rescuing mutants, Eric publishes video materials from research institutions in order to gain the advantage of public opinion. Seeing these news, Jessica was even more worried about Charles. So she texted a lot today. She hasn't used this feature for a long time. I never thought about the text messages I sent in the morning, but I got a reply in the evening. Charles will be there soon. Jessica thought to herself, feeling that she should change her clothes. What should she change? It is said that Xiao Beisheng is newlywed. Do you want to change into that nightclub dancer's outfit? Jessica's cheeks flushed. It was for a case that she needed to dress up as a dancer to buy it. It's so criminal. However, Jessica thought so, or was ready to change into that dress. Charles must like it. Who knew that she changed halfway? There was movement in the room, and Charles came to the detective agency. Charles and Jessica looked at each other. At this time, Jessica is like a delicious Wellington steak, so tempting. The smell of hormones permeated the room. Jessica didn't expect it and pounced on Charles. After the war of the century, Charles holds Jessica and tells her about his recent legend. For example, he occupies a planet formed by the head of a celestial god. Also, he cleaned up the infernal demon Mephitos. These words, if they were said by someone else, Jessica must have thought it was a fantasy, but since it was Charles who said it, it must be true. I'll take it to the void tomorrow to see. Charles hugged Jessica and said, the rainbow bridge of the destiny gauntlet that can move with individuals. But at most, you can only bring one person. Good. Jessica leaned against Charles's chest and made kitten-like sounds. Suddenly, she raised her head, and her eyes were like war again. Charles understood when he saw this look. I still want to fight, right? Who is afraid of whom? However, the sudden ringing of mobile phones broke the atmosphere. The ringtones are heavy metal rock music. It was Jessica's cell phone, and after she clicked to answer it, it was actually Daredevil Matt Murdock who was contacting her. Matt, I'm busy right now, I didn't want to join your small group. My boyfriend told me that responsibility and power are equal, and that although I have the ability, I still have to worry about $800 a month in rent. Well, okay, get in touch tomorrow. Quote. I hope you and Luke have a good harvest. Jessica hangs up the phone and starts fighting Charles again. After this wave of fighting is over, Jessica fell into a deep sleep. The next morning, Charles ordered takeout. Over breakfast, Jessica talked about Matt and Luke from yesterday night. Matt, of course, is Lawyer Ma and the vigilante daredevil of Hell's Kitchen. As for Luke, Harlem's vigilante Luke Cage. Luke Cage runs a bar. He was like a hub for news. Because recently there was a kind of monster that sucked human blood in New York, and those monsters were active in the sewers, they sucked human blood and transformed the sucked people into similar monsters. This is no longer a problem that can be dealt with alone. So Luke Cage formed the League of Defenders. As the name suggests, it is to defend their homeland. The first members of the League of Defenders were Luke Cage, Lawyer Ma and Jessica. Jessica didn't want to do such boring things. However, the mother-in-law in the Chinese restaurant in Hell's Kitchen was bitten to death by a monster. This apparently annoyed Jessica. Jessica's principle is, you are bad for me, but if you provoke me, you will definitely break your bones. Hi Jessica, I smelled you far away and feel that you are in a good mood today. A voice came from behind. Listen to what this is saying. You can smell the smell from far away, and you can feel that you are in a good mood. Charles didn't have to look back to know that it was Lawyer Ma who was coming. After Matt's blind cane touched Charles's chair, he smiled and put it away, saying, Sir, may I sit here? Quote. Of course it's fine, Murdoch, we've actually met. Charles laughed. Matt was slightly stunned, and then he could tell from Charles's voice when he had seen Charles. In the world of American comics, Daredevil Matt's superpower is mainly radar-like senses. In fact, it's hard to say whether this is a superpower or not. 360, because the stick also has such an ability. Matt's strength stems from his fighting ability. He has the fighting ability that can be called the ceiling of a human being, as well as his memory and intelligence. Matt comes into contact with an unknown number of people every day. Anyone he has come into contact with, Matt can recall it with a strong memory. Matt sat down and said, You caused me a big trouble last time. Quote. Oh, what are you talking about? Jessica was curious about their words. It's nothing, just brought a case to Murdoch's lawyer, and now it seems that the case is not going well. Charles helps Jessica peel a tea egg. The Chinese cuisine in Hell's Kitchen is a disaster. However, there is one thing to say, the breakfast in the restaurant is still good. Matt asked the waiter for a basket of steamed dumplings, a basket of su wheat, and a glass of bean juice. I heard what Charles said didn't go well. He shrugged his shoulders helplessly. The evidence of bribery using the account of United Construction Company was finally found only to Leland, the chief accountant of United Construction Company. However, Leland fell to his death that night. The chain of evidence was broken from Leland, and in the end, it was impossible to investigate. And Matt also understands that even if the investigation continues, it is impossible to bring down Wilson Fisk. That was New York's famous underground emperor Jinhee. Trying to use a bribe evidence to deal with Jinhee is a fool's dream. Kim is not a bad disease growing in New York, but he is like a chronic disease, at least for a short time, it will not cause major trouble. There's a big problem in the sewers of New York right now, and in medical terms, it's a fast-growing malignancy. Matt said. Now the focus of the Defenders Alliance is to deal with that kind of blood-sucking monster. When Matt and Jessica described the monster's characteristics, Charles frowned. You're talking about vampires. Quote. That's right, they're like the vampires in the story. Jessica nodded. Matt said. But those guys are crazy, constantly causing attacks, turning victims into blood-sucking monsters. Quote. Matt heard Jessica say that Charles is a mutant, so he wants to draw Charles into the Defenders League as well. But Charles had no interest in this kind of non-mainstream community team. Stick to rotten, from the beginning to the end. After Matt leaves ruefully, Charles is rewarded with a bronze chest. After opening, there is a snake charm. Is this thing of any use? The answer is no. So, Charles gave Jessica the serpent charm, which has the ability to be invisible. It can be regarded as further enhancing Jessica. Charles, you say it can be stealthy. Jessica looked at the snake charm in her hand, very curious, is this a magic item? Charles said, how could I lie to you, but we can test the effect in another place, such as the Void Land. Quote. Yesterday night, Charles promised to take her to the Void. Anyway, the vampire thing, just let Matt and Luke Cage go into trouble. Back in his heart clinic, Charles grabbed Jessica's waist, and as soon as his mind moved, the Rainbow Bridge appeared out of thin air. The next moment, the two of them disappeared from the same place without a trace. The land of nothingness, now courage rules this place. The Tivan group was also changed to the Xavier group. The Xavier group was divided into two groups by bravery, one to ensure the safety and order of the Void, and the original Marauders were also incorporated into it. The other is to rebuild the Void Land according to Charles's plan. Yongdu could not trust the people of the original Tivan group, and he asked the second officer Kraglin to lead them. Even among the Marauders, Kraglin is the most loyal to himself. Who is faithful to themselves? Courage can still be distinguished. When Jessica followed Charles to the Void, she was shocked and speechless. It's really a planet. Charles now rules the place. It's incredible. If she took the spaceship to observe the Void Land from a distance, it would be even more shocking. Charles took Jessica's hand and said, I'll take you to see the largest museum in the universe, it will be even more eye-opening. Quote. It's evening again on Earth. Luke Cage found that Jessica could no longer be contacted, and couldn't help but feel a little depressed. Maybe the Defenders Alliance is fine for the two of us. Luke Cage said to Matt on the side. Anyway, except for the first day, every evening was he and Matt on a mission. Today, I can't even get through the phone. Are you calling a number that is not in the service area? Oh my god, how many years had he not heard that? Is there a place in New York that is not in the service area? 1.5. Actually, we can add a little more people in. Matt, who is wearing a Daredevil uniform, said. You're talking about Jessica's boyfriend, the magical mutant. Matt shook his head. He is reluctant to join the Defenders Alliance. People are very unfriendly to mutants, presumably he is the same for humans. Luke Cage didn't deny what Matt said. He saw the information sent by the Mutant Independent Kingdom, the military and research institutions, and did a lot of terrible things to the mutants. I'm talking about a block away where someone is dealing with vampires. Now, Steve is being attacked by two vampires. He didn't know what it was. But suddenly rushing up and biting, it is always not a good thing, you can first convince and then say. Vampires have great speed and strength, and they are far more powerful than normal humans. If an ordinary gangster is targeted by a vampire, even if there is only one vampire, it will be torn apart by the vampire. However, these two vampires were not particularly lucky. Met Captain America Steve. Steve wandered around Eagle Sauce to really get to know the country he fought for. The results he got made him very confused. It reminded Steve of what Natasha had told herself, and X had opened a psychology clinic in Hell's Kitchen. He might need a psychiatrist. Coming to the place of Hell's Kitchen, Steve understood why these 8 blocks were places where Satan shook his head when he saw it. At this time, the 2 guys who didn't know if they were addicts made Steve very depressed. He punched one of them in the head. Such a force can cause a minor concussion. Steve's power control is very good, which can incapacitate people without killing him. 27 The result was that the vampire got up from the ground and continued to attack him regardless of the problem. Team America scolded angrily. Hey, man, I thought Captain America wouldn't swear. Luke Cage came out of the shadow of the street lamp and said. Daredevil on the side pouted. The propaganda you see, that's just what the White House wants you to see. Quote. Makes sense. Luke Cage nodded, then pulled out the matching gun on his waist and shot each of the 2 vampires. Steve frowned when he saw this. Although he did not stop Luke Cage, he was somewhat unhappy in his heart. Steve wasn't the Virgin, and he didn't know how many people he killed during the war. But treating enemies is not the same as treating ordinary people. The enemy should be solved by thunder means, leaving no hidden dangers. Because even the slightest trace of mercy is a fatal disaster for his comrades. But we should be kind to ordinary people. Even those who make mistakes may be worth saving. At the very least, it should not be easily deprived of life until the law decides. You shouldn't have killed them. Steve said, picking up his motorcycle. Dude, it looks like you haven't figured out the situation yet. These guys can't be considered human anymore. Luke Cage pouted at the corpse on the ground. Steve looked puzzled, and saw that the body that had been shot to the end was now turning into ashes and gradually disappearing. This made Steve's eyes instantly become solemn. Daredevil explained in a timely manner. These guys are afraid of silver, garlic and ultraviolet light, and Luke's pistol has been replaced with silver bullets to kill them with one hit. Quote. Like a vampire. Steve said. Daredevil nodded, almost, but we prefer to call them vampire monsters because they are not as smart as the vampires in mythology. Quote. Steve's professional experience made him feel that these vampire monsters were a big problem. He decided to get to know Luke Cage and Matt. Are you 2 New York's vigilantes? You can call me Divine Man, he's called Daredevil. Luke Cage said. Steve couldn't help but laugh when he heard this. Sounds like a party of the leotard heroes of the 80s. Quote. Come on man, you were still freezing in the ice in the 80s, and in fact that one was not popular in the 80s. Luke Cage seems to be a self-cook, which seems to be the traditional performance of opening a bar. Hearing the duo's analysis of the current situation, Steve decided to join them for the time being. Not to join the so-called coalition of defenders. It's just a matter of dealing with blood-sucking monsters. Seriously, since leaving the Avengers, Steve doesn't have any fondness for the so-called alliances. Matt tells the mission tonight, and they will enter a sewer to search for the nest of the vampire monster. It's better to catch them all. Because coming up with a solution is really corny. The speed at which they kill vampire monsters is far less than the conversion speed of these guys. Steve took out the shield in his backpack and followed Luke Cage and Matt. Haven't you thought about asking the official for help? Steve asked. Dude, Matt is a lawyer, and he immediately went to the Disaster Control Agency. The Disaster Control Agency didn't seem to take it seriously, sending up to 20 agents to investigate. This is New York, the financial center of Eagle Sauce. 20 agents, that's not as good as a campus gang at a community school. Quote. Luke Cage complained. Steve thought of S.H.I.E.L.D. before him. The Disaster Control Agency is not even as good as S.H.I.E.L.D. No matter how many bad things Nick Fury does, at least the intentions are good. The Disaster Control Agency is like a bureaucracy through and through. Without much fanfare to deal with vampire monsters, to put it bluntly, it is a fear of causing panic, and once it causes unrest in New York, the Disaster Control Agency is unwilling to take on this responsibility. In other words, even if the vampire monsters are rampant in New York. Nor is that the responsibility of the Disaster Control Authority. Matt noticed Steve's silence and said, looks like you've figured it out, sometimes we're on our own. Quote. Indeed, the only thing we can rely on is ourselves. Steve took a deep breath. Since the Disaster Control Agency has this attitude, the New York Police Department needs no question. In this kind of supernatural event on the other side, ordinary police officers have no experience and no equipment, and even if they intervene, the casualties will be very large. As for asking Iron Man for help, Steve is dozens of years older than Tony, why go to Tony if he can handle it himself? I know someone who might find it easier for us to find the vampire monster's lair if he is willing to help. Steve 540 thought of Charles. That's the strongest brain on earth. Luke Cage and Matt didn't know who he was talking about. When they hear that Captain America Steve knows someone, the two think of some ancient and powerful existence. I don't know if it's because the aura is too strong, and the search this night still found nothing. The sewers throughout New York are intricate, like an underground kingdom. Finding the lair of a blood-sucking monster from inside feels like finding a needle in a haystack. Everyone could only expect someone Steve knew. As they left the sewers, a black man in a trench coat and sunglasses stared at them across the street. He is known as the vampire hunter Blade Warrior. The vampires in this city had been completely eliminated by him 25 years ago. More precisely, 25 years ago, he killed the vampire ancestor Drake. All the vampires in the world disappeared, except for himself as a daywalker. He has been hiding in the shadows, observing everything in this world. Until recently, vampires appeared again in New York. The Blade Warrior didn't understand what was causing this. So he did not rashly expose his existence. He is still dormant. These vigilantes in New York may be able to force out the guys behind the scenes. Charles returns to Hell's Kitchen from the void. Because of the magic of phantom transfiguration, he shuttled back and forth between the psychological clinic and Xavier's Genius Junior School, and there was no inconvenience. He also bought a detached villa in Hell's Kitchen. It's a scarce property in Hell's Kitchen. Speaking of which, this villa originally belonged to the boss of the Hammerhead gang. However, the Hammer was killed. The house was auctioned by Charles at a high price, and at first there was a man who wanted to compete with him. The problem sits on the wealth of the Tower Resort in Osborne. Charles is like Tony's big doggy. He doesn't care about money at all. The problem of being able to settle it with money is not a problem. After some price increase, the person who competed died down. In fact, unless you have a certain amount of power or strength. Otherwise, it is definitely not a knowing choice for rich people to live in Hell's Kitchen. Magic cleans up the house, and Charles flashes to Texas, ready to take Wanda and Quicksilver to Hell's Kitchen. At this point, Steve was wearing a cap, and he found Matt Murdock. At the end of yesterday evening, the three had already disclosed their identities to each other. Of course, Steve didn't have much to make public. The famous Captain America, even a child can tell 3 or 2 Steve's heroic deeds. Murdoch, do you lawyers all work so late? Steve, who had obviously waited for a while, complained. Matt smiled. It's Hell's Kitchen, and they need a competent detective better than a lawyer. What he meant was that the Night Devil vigilante was his job. Lawyer. It's just a mixed meal. Virginian, who was one step away from Matt, couldn't help but complain loudly when he heard this. That also requires a competent detective, and there is no such person in Hell's Kitchen. Guess what I met when I came? A robber. Matt advised him not to get so excited. It's nothing unusual about this kind of rotten thing every day in Hell's Kitchen. Fergie looked loveless. The one who was robbed is me. I asked the detective on the side of the road for help. That fool, right? It was the old Jack who actually asked if I needed a gun. He also told me that the gun shop at the intersection of West Avenue was opened by his brother-in-law, and if his name was mentioned, he could get a 9.5% discount. Quote. Steve couldn't help but pat him on the shoulder. In Hell's Kitchen, you might really need a gun. Fergie subconsciously looked at Steve, he thought it was a customer. In the Hell's Kitchen this place. The law firm handles more disputes every month than the old drunkard at the end of the street who has less than half of his teeth left and his speech leaks. Because the son of the old drunkard is the third leader of the Maubert gang. But when Fergie saw Steve's appearance, he couldn't help but be stunned, and then exclaimed, Captain America. Quote. Oh my God, you're Captain America Steve Rogers. Matt, we actually met the legend. But Fergie's train of thought was strange, and after he was surprised, he thought of something. Does Captain Rogers also need to find a lawyer in Hell's Kitchen? Matt handed the briefcase to Fergie and said, I went out with Captain Rogers. There is a case information in the bag, you can take a look at it first. Quote. Oh, wait. Captain Rogers, can you sign for me? Quote. Fergie took out his signature pen. Steve took the pen and asked with a smile, where do you need me to check in? Quote. Right here, just above the chest of the suit. I'm going to a high school reunion tonight, and this signature will surely surprise them. Leave the law firm. Steve told Matt that they were going to find someone to help. If that man was willing to make a move, it would no longer be difficult for them to find the lair of the blood-sucking monster. The two walked through the streets of Hell's Kitchen. After turning a corner, Matt felt strange in his heart. How can there be a bad premonition? Isn't this the street where Jessica's detective agency is located? As soon as Charles placed the twins' telepathic abilities, noticed that someone had arrived outside the psychiatric clinic. Team America and Lawyer Ma, how did these two get together? Charles muttered. Then with a spell of transfiguration, he returned to his clinic. Knock knock knock. Only then did he hear a knock on the door. Please come in. Charles poured himself a cappuccino and looked at the two who walked in. Captain Rogers, and Lawyer Murdoch, I don't know what happened to you. The vampire monster that appeared in the sewers of New York, I hope you can help us. Steve was straight to the point. I know you have a lot of complaints about us, and what Fury did, I am also very upset. But New York has tens of millions of people, and there are a lot of mutants living here, and we can agree on this. You're looking for the lair of those blood-sucking monsters. Charles said. He's analyzing whether to help. If you refuse Steve and choose to rot, you will only have a silver chest at most. What if it helps? It doesn't seem to get anything either. Well, those guys are afraid of silverware, garlic and ultraviolet light, and the weakness is very obvious. When we find their nests, we can use high-power ultraviolet lamps to kill them. Quote. Matt interjected. He had previously asked Charles to join the Defenders, but Charles refused. Maybe it's because I'm too greedy. This is Professor X among mutants. On the way, Matt learned Charles's identity from Steve. Like Eric, the mutant-independent kingdom of Magneto, one of the most powerful mutants in the world, Lechians. I can help, but I have a request. I'll use my way to turn you into mutants. Charles crossed his hands on his chin, a decision he made after thinking about it. Put the 5-5 American team, as well as Daredevil Matt, and the Divine Power Man Luke Cage into the mutant chariot. He solved the crisis of the Sentinel robot though. But I don't know why, Charles still has a sense of crisis in his heart. He didn't know where this sense of crisis came from. However, the multiverse of the American comic world, there are often fierce people from other universes fighting across the universe. For example, in What If, Ultron has destroyed countless universes. In case there is a Ninglu-level Sentinel robot, it is not impossible to run to this universe to deal with mutants. Grow the mutant chariots. The payoff is obviously greater than a silver chest. Make them mutants. Steve didn't expect Charles to have such an ability. It seems that the former SHIELD still knows nothing about X. Nick Fury thought he was in control. How ridiculous it should be in Charles's eyes. I need to think about it. Steve thought for a moment, then said. Matt unexpectedly did not refuse. Being a vigilante in Hell's Kitchen often makes me feel powerless. In the face of bad people, it seems that I have never been strong enough. Matt thought of Mrs. Gao of the White Noodle Factory. A vicious bad guy. I should have caught him, but failed. Mrs. Gao is still at large, and has even made a comeback, and I don't know how many people have been hurt by her. If the mutant's ability can do a better job of protecting justice, Matt doesn't mind becoming a mutant. He was already blind anyway. There is always no more to lose than to gain. Charles nodded and said, no problem, this time tomorrow, I hope the Rogers battle can be considered. Also tomorrow, I'll make you a mutant. Quote. Also, you need a weapons expert before you can deal with those blood-sucking monsters. Shaw 300 less gave them a name. Frank Custer. He has another name, the Punisher. Of course. At this point, Steve and Matt did not know that Frank was a fierce guy. Today, Frank is a construction worker in downtown Manhattan. 6 months earlier, Frank had solved locomotive crews in suburban Alabama, white powder gangs in Mexico, and Irish gangs at JFK. He returned to New York and wanted to live a normal life. At that time, New York, which was being rebuilt, needed a large number of construction workers. A construction worker? Steve wondered. What's so strange about this? Most vigilantes have a job. For example, Matt is a lawyer and Luke Cage is a bar owner. Quote. Gwen is a college student. Charles added mentally. Anyway, no one pays a salary, so you still have to find a way to earn money and eat yourself. Well, not for the money yourself. He just loves it. Steve said, I don't mean that. If he's a construction worker, he should be very powerful, superpower wise. Quote. Gee, is this a natural captain? The assessment of the strength of the players has already begun. Charles shrugged his shoulders and said, You'll know this when you see him, I hope you can get by. Quote. Both did not take Charles's words seriously. What is Hope to be able to deal with? After leaving Hell's Kitchen, they came to the Lower East Side on Manhattan Island. The once bustling East Houston Street. This place was destroyed by the Chittori people more ruthlessly, and several shells happened to fall here. So, there is still nearly a third of East Houston Street, being rebuilt. Steve's face is very well known, even if he wears a cape and sunglasses, if he communicates carefully with people, he will inevitably be recognized. Matt had to walk inside the construction site alone. Hey man, this is a construction site, not a place for blind people. The construction site security guard saw Matt with a blind cane and quickly prevented him from entering. Hello, I'm looking for a construction worker. Matt explained with a smile. The security guard said impatiently, if you are looking for someone, you can call him to inform him, I am a security guard, not a herald. Quote. To be precise, I am a lawyer, I need to find one of your workers to find out about the situation, if there is no way, then I can only contact your project leader. Matt took out the business card he had with him and handed it over. The security guard glanced at Nelson Murdoch LLP. Although I haven't heard of it. But if Matt goes to the person in charge of the project for a little thing, he will inevitably be harshly criticized in the end. Putting the business card, CIBF, in his jacket pocket, the security guard asked, Who are you looking for? I'll help you inform him. Quote. Frank Custer. You're looking for him, he's a good worker, he just doesn't fit in. The security guard said casually as he left. Matt nodded slightly, thinking that a good worker should be easier to deal with. It seems that Charles's worries are completely superfluous. After a while, Frank, wearing a dark blue overalls, followed the security guard to this side. Jason said you were looking for me. Are you a lawyer? I guess I don't have any lawsuits. Quote. Frank took off his gloves and looked at Matt and said. I think we can take a step to speak. In the face of Frank's aggressive inquiry, Matt said. That's exactly what I mean. Frank nodded. Outside the construction site, behind a secluded new building. It's not finished yet, so there is basically no one. Can we talk? Frank glanced around and found at least 7 things that could be used as weapons. If you can, a blind cane in the hands of a blind lawyer is also good. Of course, these are basically not used. He could break the thin neck with just 2 hands. My name is Matt Murdoch, and I have a friend who asked me to come to you. What are you looking for me for? Frank's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a dangerous glow. After avenging his wife and daughter, Frank just wants to live a peaceful and ordinary life. If those mercenaries had found him again, he would have caused the other party to die a very miserable death. A trouble, need your help. Charles said you are very powerful. Scold. Frank could determine that the blind lawyer was the mercenaries. He slammed his punch at Matt. Matt subconsciously turned his head and dodged this fierce punch. Frank couldn't help but frown. Hell, a blind man has such a sensitive reaction. Matt wanted to speak, but Frank didn't give him a chance, and his dense fists kept smashing into him. Matt had to fight back with the blind cane in his hand. Bang! He knocked a stick on Frank's knee, and as a normal person, he would be knocked down on one knee by this stick. Frank suffered, but did not give up on the attack. With an unexpected punch, he knocked off Matt's sunglasses. Frank saw the gray-white eyes behind Matt's sunglasses, and raised his eyebrows, but he didn't expect to be really blind. At this time, Steve, who came over, saw the two who were fighting. I thought you were a lawyer and very good at communicating with people. Steve said. Matt was depressed for a moment, He was just good at communicating with judges, not that he was good at communicating with criminals. Also, where did this named Frank come from with such hostility? Captain America Steve Rogers. Frank tilted his head slightly and muttered after seeing Steve. Frank was sure that Team America Steve wouldn't be one of those mercenaries. He put away his hostility and went to a tavern with Steve. In the morning, there were no people in the tavern. Frank is a regular customer here, and he asks for 3 glasses of the strongest whiskey. After finding a corner seat and sitting down, Frank said, "As you can see, I am a construction worker. I don't know what the famous Captain America is looking for me." Quote. Charles says you're a weapons expert and we need you to deal with the vampire monsters of New York. Steve was straight to the point. By the way, tell Frank about the blood-sucking monsters in the sewers. Frank still doesn't want to break the existing peaceful life. I think I need to think about it. Frank drank all the wine and put down a bill, which was regarded as rejecting Steve and the two. Why are the people Charles recommending as difficult as him? Matt grumbled as he took a sip of wine. Ahem, this whiskey is spicy choking. Steve took a sip and felt pretty good. They used to fight on the European continent and loved this high-altitude whiskey. Charles gave Steve and Matt the task of persuading the Punisher. He himself came to Wakanda. Or the current mutant independent kingdom. The kingdom has taken on a new look, and now that thousands of mutants have settled here, the kingdom has begun to get on track. Formerly a mutant protection organization in Louisiana, it is now primarily responsible for receiving mutants. They rescue mutants from all over the world. Bring the mutants back here. The security of the mutant independent kingdom is mainly responsible for the doppelganger. He alone can be divided into hundreds or thousands. On your own, you can maintain law and order. If you can't handle things well, you can ask Death Woman, Toad Man and others to help. As for Eric the Magneto and Raven the Witch, they have to deal with diplomacy, which is more troublesome. Charles, it's great that you can come here, I've been dying of a headache lately. After Eric saw Charles, he couldn't help but vomit. The mutant independent kingdom was the most successful thing he had ever done in his life. However, it also keeps him extremely busy. If it's just busy, there are many things that can't be solved by being busy. For example, not long ago, Thunderbird, Eclipse Marcos and others, they rescued dozens of studied mutants in a special hospital in Gall Chicken. Several guards were killed in the process. The Gallic Chicken harshly condemned the mutant independent kingdom diplomatically, and many countries followed suit, which caused Eric a great headache. Before, I could ignore them, or I could attack their freighters as a warning. Eric said. But now I have a country where thousands of mutants need protection. If I did, it would break the tranquility of the present. Quote. If I don't do anything, they may ban the export of all kinds of necessities to the mutant independent kingdom. Food is not a big problem, but we rely on imports for medicines, clothes, and resources that are not available here. Ruiwan on the side smiled bitterly. If we don't respond to this, not only these countries will isolate us in the future, but the whole world will isolate us. Quote. So Eric, what are you going to do? Charles came to the mutant independent kingdom to find some mutant criminals and deprive them of their abilities. But now there is no rush for that. Charles, I think it's good for you to be the leader of the mutants, I obviously don't fit in this position. Eric stared into Charles's eyes, ready to shake off the responsibility. Previously, he led mutant struggles. However, when it comes to really running a country, there are many things that give Eric a headache. So, if Charles is willing to take over this responsibility, he will not hesitate to give up. Charles hurriedly shook his head in refusal. Just kidding, who loves to do such a hard job? He doesn't want to do it anyway. Congratulations to the host for successfully swinging and obtaining a bronze treasure chest. The sound of a rotten system ringing in Charles's head. The chest was temporarily stored in a storage ring, and Charles was in no hurry to open it. Eric, since you created the mutant independent kingdom, it is your responsibility to take care of it. You don't want to have a mutant child in the future, think you're a mediocre leader. Charles said. Well, it looks like you're really different from before, so what do you think I should do with Gallic Chicken? International diplomacy is not just about using force, you can try to bring them to their knees economically. Charles gave Eric an idea. You mean vibranium? The previous countries here never traded vibranium, a magical metal with endless possibilities. Quote. A hesitant look appeared on Eric's face. I even suspect now that the Gallic chicken unites many countries with diplomatic condemnation for the purpose of vibranium here. If I take out vibranium, it proves that the mutant independent kingdom has yielded to them. Or rather, we fell into their trap. Quote. Charles shook his head and said, I'm not talking about vibranium, there are other things besides vibranium that have the same effect. Quote. Saying that, he took out some seeds, which were taken from the Voidlands Museum. Seeds of the flower of Krakow. In the original X room, the flowers of Krakow are special plants on the island of Krakow. However, in this American comic world, Charles did not discover the existence of Krakow Island. The flower of Krakow, also one of the collector's collection. This flower can be made into medicine. Through different cultivation techniques, the flower of Krakow can make various psychotropic drugs, can make the strongest antibiotics, and can cure cancer. These three effects alone are enough to go crazy all over the world. Raven learned the importance of the flower of Krakow faster than Eric. The mutant independent kingdom can process the flower of Krakow into a medicine and sell it worldwide. This can both solve the problem of funding the independent kingdom of mutants. It can also solve current diplomatic problems. In the face of diplomatic condemnation like the Gallic chicken, the mutant independent kingdom can choose to refuse to sell medicines, and the Gallic chicken has to take its proud head. The same is true for countries that covet vibranium. Charles, I know that mutants can do without me, but not without you. Eric learned the value of the flower of Krakow, and excitedly gave Charles a hug. The problem that has plagued him for a long time can be regarded as a solution. When it became clear that Charles needed mutant prisoners, Eric personally took him to the prison. Today's mutant prison has 7 or 8 mutants. Mutants are just as bad guys. Even, with their own abilities, lawless mutants are far more numerous than humans. Returning to New York from the mutant independent kingdom, Charles gained several decent abilities. In addition to the ability, Eric also discussed something with Charles, and he was going to send some students and teachers to Xavier Gifted Junior School. Correspondingly, Charles also has to arrange some exchange students and teachers to mutate the independent kingdom. Mutant children, representing the future of mutants. In terms of school experience, even 100 Erics are not as good as Charles. Eric hadn't taken this seriously before. As a complete hawk, if you are not convinced, you will be done. Now to manage a thriving country, education becomes very important. He has had people build schools. But experience is not something that can be accumulated in a moment. Even if Charles doesn't come to 227 him today, Eric is ready to go to Charles. Charles agreed. Next, Steve, Matt and Luke Cage approached Charles, and after thinking about it, agreed to Charles's request. It's okay to be a mutant, anyway, a lot of people in Harlem call me a freak. But there is one point, I don't want to really become a monster, that's the kind. You are called alienated mutants. Because I open a bar, many girls like my type, and we can often have some super friendship exchanges. Quote. I don't want to be weird and deprive me of the happiest things. That's right, it's the happiest thing, and fighting evil can only be counted as the second happiest thing. Quote. Luke Cage chattered. Charles didn't expect Luke Cage to be a talker, and simply waved his hand and integrated a light mass into his body. The Epsilon level ability that alienates the body, Charles also has 2 in his hands. Of course, such abilities will not give Luke Cage them. Charles just put the photophore in the storage ring to teach the extremists against mutants a lesson. As the photophore integration ended, Luke Cage looked at the changes in his body. After finding that nothing had changed, he was relieved. So, I'm a mutant now. What are my variant abilities? Quote. Luke Cage asked. You can try clapping hard with both hands. Like applause. Luke Cage said while giving a high five. Violent sound waves burst out of the hand. Bang, bang, bang. I saw that the glass in the room shattered. Oh by ka. This is amazing. Quote. Luke Cage was stunned by the self-inflicted effect. Even Steve exclaimed, the ability of mutants, it's really amazing. Humans are understandably fearful of mutants. Quote. In addition to fear, there is more jealousy, and this jealousy can turn people into demons. Charles echoed Steve's words. Steve thought about it carefully and couldn't help but nod. Indeed, jealousy can turn people into hideous devils. Charles used the magic that was restored to his original form, and all the damage caused by Luke Cage was gone. Luke Cage saw this and said sincerely, "If there is a choice, I like this ability." Quote. "Although I'm a black man, one thing is that black people in Harlem always fight when they get drunk, and I don't know how many of these things I solve every month. If I had the ability, I could quickly restore my bar." Luke Cage's mouth was like Gatling, and when it was opened, it chattered. With a wave of his finger, Charles simply blocked out his voice. Facing the suddenly quiet world, the corners of Steve's mouth raised and he gave Charles a thumbs up. Charles gave another mutant ability to Lawyer Ma. Speaking of which, this ability comes from an acquaintance. The hiding of the Louisiana Mutant Protection Organization, this guy defected to the Hellfire Club in the original book, Gifted. In this world, he is in the independent kingdom of mutants and wants to use his ability to smuggle vibranium. As a result, he was caught by Eric. Matt gets the ability to mutate stealth, and he disappears without a trace in a flash. Very capable, it's a pity that you can't see. Steve regretted, and then said with anticipation, "I kind of expect the mutant ability you gave me." Quote. "That will definitely surprise you." Charles gifted the mutant ability to Steve. Steve's abilities are Barrier and Shield, and this ability is Dr. Reyes's. After all, injected with Super Soldier Serum Steve, the combat effectiveness is already good. The ability to mutate this shield. The icing on the cake for Steve. Just as the three were familiar with their abilities, Frank pushed the door in from outside. Steve and Matt were both taken aback when they saw him. Because Frank had already rejected them yesterday. Frank didn't care about their surprise. He looked at Charles sitting behind the desk and said, "I guess you're Charles, right?" Quote. "Hey man, how did you find us?" Steve wondered. Frank didn't want to answer such a stupid question, he had seen Matt's business card. "Now that you know your identity, it is simply easy to grasp their whereabouts on Manhattan Island. If you change cars next time, it may be a little more difficult to find." Since it was the American team who asked himself, Frank gave him some face. "Charles, I'll call you Charles, I choose to join you in dealing with those blood-sucking monsters," Frank said solemnly. He did turn down both Steve yesterday. However, a new coworker named Donnie on his construction site, Frank liked the young man. It's not a friend. He basically doesn't make friends. It is a worker from 2.3 on the construction site. Yesterday night, Downey was killed by a vampire monster, in front of Frank. Frank took out the vampire monster, but failed to save Donnie. This provoked Frank's anger. "I think that I have to kill all the blood-sucking monsters in New York, so that it can be regarded as revenge." Charles told him about the mutants. Frank rejected the offer. He just has to deal with vampire monsters, not to become a mutant, which are two different things. Charles also did not force Frank. He is using these people to expand the mutant chariot. If the gains outweigh the losses, it's not good. Besides, there won't necessarily be new Sentinel robots, it's just a precautionary plan now. Thanks for watching, please subscribe and support our channel.